TRRS drums.
Talk you through all this.
TRRS Sankara.
Two, two, two. Check. Two, two, check. What's up, everyone? How does, question for you, right off the top. How does the stream look right now? A couple months back, I lowered the bitrate because I was getting this constant dropped frame issue. Today I tried to increase it a bit, and I increased the resolution a bit. How is it looking from your end? Great interview on the Insurgents pod with Kelly Wheel. I always thought flat earth folks were just like wrestling fans who pretend that it is real part of the theater. I guess there are people who actually believe it. Yes, they really do. Yes, they really, really do, Plunger Man. That's right. Fuck, you know what? I actually just realized, now that you mentioned that I was supposed to upload the latest episode of the Insurgents pod with Ellie Valley. I was supposed to do that this morning, and I did not. I just realized this. Lots of anti-Semitism in the flat earth community, too. Well, that was one of the things that I've realized as well. I thought it was just like a silly, like, weird rabbit hole. But yeah, it's really tied together with, like, evangelical thought and white supremacy and anti-Semitism. It's really, like, it's very easy to underestimate that. As a Twitch partner, I'm surprised you hadn't been streaming in HD. I thought I was, though. That's the thing. I actually thought I was. I think I might have had to downgrade it because I was getting all these drop frame issues. Yeah, it was HD, but the bit rate. But actually, Sean, the output resolution was lower. The input resolution was high, but the output, I realized, was like 720. So I did upgrade that as well. Input. What's up, Nicole? Welcome. Back for another round of fetishizing Canadians, I see. Very interesting. By the way, Mother Trucka, thank you for the 4 months of Tier 1. And thank you, GMO Radio, as well, for the 6 months of Tier 1. Thank you to you both. I appreciate it. Nicole, you're the streaming expert. Do I look more high resolution now? Is there motion blur still? I think there still is. Does it look better, though? We're going to see how this goes. A few years ago, I was running a podcast, and we thought it'd be funny to invite on a guy we all worked with who was a bit of a conspiracy nut. Ended up doing 2 full episodes with him. The remarkable thing was listening to him, and it was so obvious that he was extremely smart, but somewhere along the line, the math went wrong, and someone can end up in that hole. The shirt holes disappeared in the low res. High resolution does not equal frame rate. You're talking about 2 different things. Okay, I think I know that. But is the bit rate the same thing as frame rate? Or those are 2 different things as well, right? I know that. I'm just making sure that you know, though. Right? I'm just making sure that you know that, yeah, it's a test. I'm testing you. I know all this stuff already. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so when you say, how does the resolution look? Do I still have motion blur? I feel like you don't know that. Okay, I can see how you would have gotten that impression. I think I was talking about two different things. I was wondering whether the resolution was increased and the motion blur was reduced, because there was different settings that I adjusted. Do I need to adjust the frame rate separately? I guess so. I don't think I can do it when I'm streaming either. This is going to have to do for today. Frame rate is frames per second. Bit rate affects stuff like square blotches.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual.
60 frames per second is an option, but it looks like we're at 30 still. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I am streaming from the metaverse. That's right. Eventually I'll upgrade. Yeah, we'll get the 144 FPS 4K RAW settings. Eventually we're going to get there, okay? One of these days. Okay, thank you, Nicole. That would be very helpful. We should do that. Okay, so I know when I'm watching a movie, I always prefer 24 frames per second. Like, I remember when The Hobbit came out, and Peter Jackson wanted to make it 48 frames per second. He thought that was going to be like the new standard. And just watching it made me feel so uncomfortable. Like, watching a film in 48 frames per second, it just looks horrible. It somehow looks worse. That's the weird thing. It looks worse. It looks like that motion blur, that like motion effect that you can activate on your TV. Also, your resolution would look a lot better if you had adequate lighting. This would be the biggest game changer for you. Is this not adequate? I guess so. I guess it's not. It's going to have to do for now. More frames in movies equals less motion blur soap opera effect. Yeah, it just looks bizarre. It made me physically uncomfortable to look at it. I've got my motivational water again. I've got my motivational water. Don't drink that. It's processed tap. I'm always talking about the smart water stuff. I hate that stuff. Hey, Afro Socialista, what's up? Let me just crack open this bad boy. And it's not going to be low energy streamer today. I'm drinking God's smart water tea. G Cluppy, I'm sorry to say you got totally owned in that video yesterday. What is that little red thing next to your name, G Cluppy? Oh, cool. You got a cheer tail. Nice. A 10K cheer badge. Very nice. And in fact, I have to upload different cheer badges. That's cool. Look at that, G Cluppy. I'm sorry for just making fun of you for being owned right now. I apologize. Not gonna lie, yes I did. It was just the way he specifically called it out. And he had mentioned Smart Water like 2 minutes ago. And then that was the brand that he was just the most disgusted with. And it was almost like obvious to him that he wouldn't even have to go into the details. He didn't even need to go into the details of what was wrong with Smart Water. He was just like, just get that shit out of my face. I thought that was pretty funny. I'm sure the Smart Water is fine now. Anyway, chin chin, everyone. No low energy streamer for me today. This one goes out to you, Outrun. Tremendous. Yeah. So, Doc, thanks for the raid a few minutes ago. Thank you very much, Doc. I appreciate it. How was your stream today? I saw you were talking about comic books. I'm having water infused with coffee beans. That's an interesting idea. We should explore that. Rob, we were learning about how Jeff Bezos is ruining the digital comic book space this morning. It said, did Amazon buy like Comixology, like the comic app, which I remember really liking? Yes, and they got rid of the app. Oh, good. Oh, cool. Wonderful. Great stuff. And many people lost their libraries. I'm sure I did as well. I had a nice little library in there as well, and I'm sure I also lost it. I shaved this morning. I don't know if you can see. Smooth Rob is back in effect. Smooth caffeinated Rob in full effect right now. A number of good stuff to get to today, folks. A number of good things. So it's all in the title. Maybe you could play the Smooth MIDI by Santana and Rob Thomas. I probably should. Man, it's a hot one. It's not very hot today, though, so that's not as fitting. So we can talk a little bit more about the NDP stuff today. There's some more delightful NDP news dropped with that. We can check that out. There's some Ukraine content we can take a look at. And also today, one thing that I wanted to do is talk about none other than Walter Rodney. It's Walter Rodney's birthday today. The famous Guyanese Marxist historian, author of the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. He also wrote a book about the Russian Revolution, a number of other really important books. It's his birthday today. I mentioned yesterday how I did see that tweet by Anna Kasparian, Tarme, and I was just very perplexed by it. Really not good stuff. It was really bad. You missed the stream yesterday. What was your initial reaction to this Lib NDP hookup? Okay, I'll tell you that. I'll go to that in 1 minute, Professor Top Hat, because I posted a clip to it on Twitter today that you can check out. But I did want to talk about Walter Rodney. It's Walter Rodney's birthday. Like I said yesterday, I had a bunch of content lined up for Black History Month that kind of got scuttled because of like the fucking stupid convoy and this Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that took up so much time and space that a lot of the stuff that I had planned didn't really work out. But we don't need to only talk about these issues 1 month out of the year. In fact, we can talk about it all the time, anytime we want. Today is Walter Rodney's birthday. Really, really immensely influential historian. And I thought it was a good opportunity to spend some time talking about Walter and either watching. There's a really interesting documentary featuring some of his speeches and adding some of the important context, explaining who Walter Rodney is, and a number of things we can check out. So I thought we'd spend some time today talking about Walter Rodney. Walter Rodney Day. And yeah, if you want to see my reaction, it can really be summed up with this. Okay? It can really be summed up with this. If you want to see my reaction to the Liberal NDP deal, here we go. This is all you really need to see a bit with it. If you missed the stream yesterday.
We've got your back. We're here for you. We hear you, we see you, and we're fighting to get you that help, and we are delivering that help.
Oh. Oh. So that's that. That's my reaction. I think that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about where I'm at here. This is actually a great face. This as well. If this is just the screenshot. That's good. That's good as well. He hears us. He sees us. And they're going to do some bullshit. Can you react to this as well? I haven't really added to this chain in quite a while. You can see where the famous GIF comes from. What a ridiculous person. If shit libs stop with the see you hear you, will they move on to we got you fam? Maybe. I don't know. Like I was saying yesterday, thank you, that helps. No problem. No problem, Nicole. Like I was saying yesterday, you would think there's someone close to Jugmeat or someone higher up in this sort of NDP communication chain who could say, like, we're not doing the see you, hear you thing anymore. We're not going to do that. Okay, Rob, it's Lodane from the future, and I have to tell you never to do that much Robception again, or Skynet will happen. Oh, fuck. Oh, man, we caused Skynet. What a ridiculous thing. What a ridiculous person I am. Yeah, so you would think that someone would tell them, like, we're not going to do the see you, hear you thing. We're not going to do that anymore. And just think of some other way to phrase that basic kind of platitude. You know? Rob, it's Bad Bunny from the future. Lodane is part of Skynet. Keep going. It's the only cure for Skynet. Oh my god, I don't know what to believe here. This is like that scene in Terminator 2 when he's like, John, come help me. Sarah Connor, remember? Come, help me, John. And then the other Sarah Connor appears behind him, and it's like, what? It's a Nicole 2000 unit. Like, do they even have a single calm social media person on staff who's maybe perused the internet in the last 7 years? This is the crazy thing, Praxid, is they do. One of my good friends, and I don't want to dox anyone, one of my good friends is one of their comms people who for sure knows all this shit and is an incredibly cool person. And I wish that they would listen to her more, because apparently they're not doing that. Dr. Manhattan voice. I'm in a 1995 focus group. Everyone loves the hear you and see you message. I am in a 2009 focus group. Everyone loves the hear you and see you message. I am in 2028. Everyone loves the see you and hear you message. We're going to be hearing this see you and hear you shit while there's like massive heat wave. This is like, it's been listen, folks, listen. I spoke to someone, one of our constituents, a few days ago, and she was complaining to us about the 50th straight day of dangerous temperature warnings, and about how there's mass death events going on in which tens of millions of people are dying and being displaced. And I just want to say, we see you, we hear you. We know the warlords in the wastelands are hoarding all the water. We see you, we hear you, and we're going to think about organizing some kind of a committee to explore the possibility of potential increased access to water opportunities under certain income levels, possibly in the future. This is what they're going to be saying to us. People screaming as the temperature outside boils them alive due to climate change. I hear you, I see you. Yeah. Affordable access to water and air opportunities. That's right. We're going to explore it. Listen, no guarantees. No guarantees or anything. Don't get any ideas. We're going to put together a committee to look at this possibility. Oh, if you just want us to make water universal, well, guess what? Guess what, asshole? Then rich people are going to get the water too. Don't you feel like a loser now? You want this stuff to be universal? Then wealthy people might have the water also. You have to work for it. Don't give me the thing. I want the opportunity. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you can teach a man to drink water, or you can teach a man to have an opportunity for a means tested water opportunity. A person. You can teach a person. I'm just going to the classic saying and highlighting how ridiculous it is that's how it's phrased in the biblical sense. I'm highlighting how unfair that is. Lost that one about a third of the way through. I had it there. I had it something, and then I lost it. I had something, and I just didn't quite come together. A woman doesn't need the lessons. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. You got to think about the deficit. Oh. Water opportunity zones. Can I just say you're very handsome today? Yes, you can, Bup Dragon. You can say that. It's probably my increased bit rate or resolution. The only deficit I see is in respecting women. Oh my. Don't mind me while I put this large wall around our golf course, while you all die of dehydration in the now desertified Colorado. Very good, though. But this is the language we're going to be hearing. This is the language we're going to be hearing. We see and hear your complaints about desert warlord Immortan Joe. My friends, do not become dependent on these water-based opportunities, for you'll then resent their absence. Trudeau is starting to speak at EU Parliament. Is that so, Stu? Do we need to watch this?
Une grande perte pour votre Parlement et pour l'Europe. J'aimerais également prendre un moment pour adresser mes condoléances aux proches des victimes.
Do we really need to see this?
Nos pensées et notre amitié sont avec la Belgique en ces moments difficiles. I first addressed the EU Parliament in Strasbourg in 2017. It was the first time a Canadian Prime Minister addressed your Parliament. Back then, this Parliament saw me as someone new on the world stage. We got to work, tackling progressive issues, building the things that we thought mattered.
Did you?
We could see that something was lurking off on the horizon, something shadowy, something that was threatening. We didn't look close enough. When I spoke to this Parliament 5 years ago, I spoke about making multilateralism work for the middle class and those working hard to join it, so that economic frustrations don't become fertile ground for populism, nativism, protectionism, and the polarization towards more extreme political views. Well, today, we are staring these forces in the face as they threaten the peace, justice, truth, democracy, and stability of our world. And we have a choice about what we do next. Since 2017, the world has changed a lot. A global pandemic has taken the lives of over 6 million people and disrupted the lives of everyone else. A global recession saw millions lose their jobs, with many economies still struggling to bounce back. A world that is not just now forecasting, but living the dangers of climate change. A growing distrust of governments and facts. A weakening of democratic institutions. We saw one of our staunchest guarantors of the rules-based order choosing for 4 years to step away from NATO, away from multilateralism. And now, Putin's criminal invasion of a sovereign, independent, democratic Ukraine. People
I want what you're crunching.
have a
Have
real
some nice
and
celery
deep
and peanut
sense
butter.
of uncertainty about what the future holds.
Nice little snack.
These are anxious times, and people are looking for leadership and solutions. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in cynical populists who are trying to exploit these anxieties. They pretend to have easy solutions that play on people's fears. Even in Canada, where 90% of people are vaccinated, and our motto as a country is peace, order, and good government, we saw anti-vaccine and anti-government protests devolve into illegal occupations of our communities and blockades of our
There are, in
borders.
fact, easy solutions. That's
The
true.
leaders of those convoys were effective in turning citizens with
There's a
real
number of
anxieties
solutions. Have we tried some?
against the
Maybe we can try and look at some of
system
those.
best suited to allay those concerns. But democracy isn't a game. And there just aren't easy solutions to the big, complex problems we are all facing. But that doesn't mean that the way forward
It's true. He wants us to
isn't
make us think
clear.
it's a lot more complex than it actually is, isn't it?
There is no greater clarity than the will of the people who want better for themselves and their children at home, and no stronger defense against destructive forces from outside our democracies than the unwavering unity of like-minded partners. Au cours des 80
We fed AI
dernières
thousands
années,
of liberal speeches, and this is what
nous
came out.
avons collectivement établi et renforcé
Cool, get me revenge
une
on
série
Johnny.
de règles
The
et
subtitles are great.
d'institutions afin d'accroître la stabilité
Collective
et la
mom.
prévisibilité dans les affaires
Read the institution, I
internationales.
find a quiet or the
Nous
stability.
l'avons fait
The
pour
previous
protéger
stability.
les
This
gens,
actually makes more sense.
pour leur offrir
Only Sapphire
une
International
meilleure
level.
perspective de paix,
Year the mayor
pour
perspective.
défendre leur dignité et leurs droits
The
inaliénables.
past for the
Et pour faire en
found
sorte
regarding E.T.
qu'ils soient libres de choisir leur propre
E.T.
avenir.
moi.
Aujourd'hui, ces règles et
Ann Arbor, I
institutions
believe people federal
sont
soft
ouvertement
kids who are
menacées.
liberal the choisir love
Vladimir
pop have
Poutine
knee sorry
a
see
enfreint
regularly
les
his
préceptes
institution
les plus
Vladimir Putin
fondamentaux du droit
on Friday.
international. Et il tue maintenant
We place
les
separately
civils
proof on a
innocents en
Moto G2
bombardant des
International
hôpitaux et des
in
immeubles
to methanol
résidentiels.
not be civil in Assam bombard, and he's happy to.
Flagrant
It's
des
my
lois
blood
et de la vie
presidential.
humaine constitue une menace immense
Sir,
pour
me
l'Europe
please flag
et
home
pour
to
le
let
monde
it
entier.
constitute
Canada,
Emma's mouthful
the
of
EU,
crapapole.
And all of our partners and allies are
It actually
facing a
makes more
defining
sense.
moment. We cannot
When you say it with
fail
that cadence, it's you can see you can
We
just say
must
anything and it just
meet
makes sense, doesn't it?
this moment. So I speak to you today
If you just speak
no
in that
longer as
in that
someone
liberal
quite so
style.
new. In fact, I may now be one of the longer serving progressive leaders around. And I'm certainly not going to pretend to have all the answers.
You
But
clearly
what I do
don't.
know is that there is work that lies before us as thoughtful leaders, as people focused
I thought all these
on
things were too
the short
complicated.
and
There's no easy
long-term
answers. There's no
well-being
answers.
of all our citizens, as people committed to democracy
He's
and
so
the
humble.
values that underpin them.
Famously very democratic country
And
of
that
Canada.
work is more important than ever. Putin thought democracy was weak. He saw our disagreements and debates
Our country is literally
as
run by
weakness.
oil companies
But what he has never understood
and mining companies.
is that the rigors of debate, that forceful
We do not have a
civic
democracy.
engagement, is what makes us strong. And that democracy at its best will always be stronger than authoritarianism. But if we're going to be honest, and we need to be honest in this place, we haven't always been at our best these past years. Putin thought we were divided. He thought he could weaken the EU and NATO.
These people think that the only form of democracy that exists is Western liberal democracy.
He's seeing it backfire. NATO and the EU
it sucks,
are now
folks.
more resolved and united than ever. Because all of us in this room who are committed to democracy know in our
That's
bones
why Zelensky banned 11 opposition parties. Such a democracy.
didn't
That's
happen
right.
by accident. And it will not continue without deliberate, mindful.
Yeah, they're never talking about democracy. They're talking about capitalism. That's it. That's Western liberal democracy. That's what it is. Boo! I want to be the lady from Princess Bride. Boo!
Je veux être bien clair. Les
Yeah, I'm
Européens,
going to do the translation
y compris
again.
nos alliés en Europe de l'Est, peuvent compter
The
sur
Eclair,
l'amitié
is it the last
et le
of
soutien total du Canada.
counties? Let me see a
Le
yellow
Canada
suit.
dirige
Your
le
total,
groupement
you
tactique de la
Canada.
présence avancée rehaussée de l'OTAN
Oh Canada,
en
the
Lettonie.
regional
Une mission qui regroupe 10 pays de l'OTAN.
government tactic telepresence
Depuis
about
5 ans,
Syria.
des centaines
Tony
de
and
militaires
Mission
canadiens
Choir
sont
Group, this
déployés
Pelota,
à des milliers de
Wata, the
kilomètres de chez eux
Bisanka,
pour se
the
positionner à 200
something the
kilomètres
mediator
de la
can
frontière
adjust, an
russe.
employee, and immediate
Ils sont
KM
déployés en
GZR.
Lettonie
ER for
parce que
supposition,
c'est important
and do
pour la
some
sécurité de l'Europe.
no
Mais
mate
aussi
laughs,
pour la
uh-oh, so
sécurité du
deploy a
Canada.
litany of ski trip. A
Récemment,
portable, a
nous avons
security
annoncé
job, see Flex Security
que
G
nous
Canada.
doublons notre déploiement à l'OTAN
Re
pour
someone
les
to
années à
70
venir.
C do belong.
Ces militaires ne défendent pas
a
seulement la
diploma
Lettonie et
and
l'Europe de
cinnamon.
l'Est, ils défendent notre liberté, notre
Attire new
sécurité et
default
toute
possible
nos
Malali Tony
démocraties.
Laura is defined not true.
We can
Liberty not
let
true. Security at two,
Ukraine
no
down.
democracy. Inspiring.
They are counting on us. So let's use all the tools we have at our disposal.
It sounds like we're only using one
Zelensky
tool.
and I have been talking often about the strong ties between our countries.
Let's just sell them more
Canada, as
Stinger missiles.
mentioned,
That
is
should resolve the
home to
situation.
the second largest Ukrainian community in the world after Russia. So we must all collectively step up to provide humanitarian aid to support families affected by this war and already start thinking about investing to rebuild Ukraine afterwards. We must all continue to send military equipment and lethal aid to help Ukrainians in their heroic defense, not just of their lands,
Lethal aid.
but of all of the principles that defend ours.
That should solve. Let's just sew this whole thing
we
up.
must continue to impose unprecedented sanctions on Putin and his enablers in Russia.
Keep
and
funding
Belarus,
Azov Battalion until
increasing
this
pressure
war
as
stops.
much as we can.
Problem
We
solved.
must
Did I say this
ensure
was
that
complicated?
The decision to invade a sovereign,
Affordable
independent
access to
country
lethal
is
aid
understood
opportunities.
To be a
No, that's
strategic
universal, actually.
failure that carries with it ruinous costs for Putin and Russia.
Sanction Canada for committing genocide, I'll say.
Putin's attack on Ukraine is an attack on the values that form the pillars of all democracies. We have a responsibility to make the case to people about why these values matter so much, not just to Ukrainians, but to us all. We must recommit ourselves to the work of strengthening our democracies and demonstrate the principled leadership citizens everywhere are looking for. That leadership means reinforcing the things our citizens have in common rather than playing to their differences. The task before us.
Justin, what about the indigenous
is
people
not
that need
small,
help in your own goddamn
but
country?
given
Great
the
question.
right tools, we can do it.
Why are we not
And
getting
we should all be
sanctioned?
reassured of how much of this work is already underway.
Speaking of lethal aid, we're sending
Misplaced
lethal
in
aid to
parliaments
Saudi
like it
Arabia while they commit
across Europe
genocide
and
as well. Maybe
around
we
the
should
world.
stop doing that.
Au Canada, notre gouvernement élabore actuellement une nouvelle mesure législative pour lutter contre les méfaits.
Oh, Canada, not a government lab, are actually Mountain Velma's only slots Eve. Quality Control MFA only said Annie. Canada assumes the president's that coalition for liberty only.
Dans l'espace numérique.
Living in constant matrix and select protection did what, Dr. Sun? Inclusion and diversity. Diversity down this path, numeric. You see, Alan, you are a pain, but the visa. In diversity, you need a diversity, oh Canada. The diversity to see, okay, the king's son. Interesting. Yes, sir. 7. Its only planned reconciliation of Eclipse. Clip a product on systemic. The legality this X to the defense of the community LGBTQ. You first do enough him on target because this one, unless you, on their knees, on over the LED declaration, in essence, solid with the public on one of his disciples took me on, his entrepreneurial community, noir done only in fluctuations in economic.
And should.
A Suki process. Pro-Savannah intelligible account governments can and should play a positive role in people's lives.
We made massive investments to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was the right thing to do to protect our people. And it was the necessary thing to do to ensure a strong and robust economic recovery.
Yeah, I remember when there was help during the COVID pandemic literally 2 years ago.
We invest in people, including in the most vulnerable.
And then after like 5 months, by the way, disabled people and poor people were cut off from getting this aid. And then 5 months in, it's like, okay, well, I think that's enough. I think we got this something sewn up.
But our entire country.
Good thing COVID's over now. That's right.
The foundations of our democracy also benefit. Que ce soit les conséquences immédiates de l'insécurité alimentaire, de l'inflation et des prix élevés de l'essence, ou que ce soit les conséquences à long terme des changements climatiques ou de la pandémie, les démocraties doivent être à leur meilleur pour pouvoir tenir les conversations difficiles et nécessaires avec leurs citoyens pour trouver des solutions. Et à propos de la lutte contre les changements climatiques, la collaboration entre le Canada et l'Union européenne continue d'être essentielle. Notre travail se poursuit pour accélérer la transition vers une énergie verte et renouvelable, pour respecter nos engagements de la COP26 et pour sécuriser nos chaînes d'approvisionnement, incluant nos chaînes d'approvisionnement pour les minéraux critiques. Il faut continuer d'agir ensemble pour bâtir un avenir plus propre et une économie plus résiliente. Canada and European countries also share the goals of reducing poverty and inequality while growing the middle class. We share aspirations
Blackface Bob here to
for
tell
a
us
better,
about caring about the most
safer,
vulnerable. That's right.
and cleaner future. Progressive trade agreements like CETA.
And where there is genocide of indigenous peoples going on currently in the country that he's currently the prime minister of.
High standards for workers, consumers, and the environment. Our ability to pull together despite differences and deliver for people really mattered, and I thank you all for that. With the longest coastline in the world, Canada's shores reach out into the Atlantic, Pacific, and Arctic oceans. And our connections with the whole of the Americas is strong.
His hands are tied.
We're one of the most
He sees the people that are being genocide, he hears them.
The UN, with memberships in
And
NATO,
not doing shit.
the G7, the G20, the Arctic Council, APEC, the OAS, the Commonwealth, and la Francophonie. We all have a lot of work to do, and collaboration will be key to success towards building a better future for our kids and our grandkids. It will require constant efforts, but I'm confident that we are up to the task. I'm confident all of us here today. I'm confident in the resilience of our institutions, and mostly I'm confident in our citizens. And I can say that because of what I've witnessed over the past 4 weeks. The resolve of our united response to this unacceptable invasion has been stronger than anything Putin expected. And not just from governments, but from citizens in all our countries. It's that spirit and resolve that we must take forward with us. The European Union has mobilized to defend democracy. And as always, you can count on the friendship and full support of Canada every step of the way. Ensemble, nous devons soutenir les démocraties partout à travers le monde,
Ensemble founded nearly
incluant les plus
democracy.
fragiles, et lutter contre l'autoritarisme
Back to her
grâce à plus
fragile.
d'investissement et à plus de leadership engagé.
Beauty control the territories.
Nous devons
Theories are supposed
appuyer les gens
investment.
courageux comme le président Zelensky
Yeah,
et les
plus the
Ukrainiens
leadership on
qui
Gaggy,
luttent
she.
pour leurs droits.
The one
Et
I
nous
prefer,
devons
Leisure
poursuivre
Crew,
notre
has
travail,
your company.
chacun
Please
de
don't
nous,
say Lansky,
afin
Haley's,
d'améliorer
you
nos
can
démocraties
you
en
kill,
notre
loot,
propre pays.
Fedora and Devil perceive. Not have I shocked you,
5 years
didn't
ago,
you?
we saw the storm clouds on the horizon. But today, we are clear-eyed. Continuons à combattre les mensonges par la vérité.
Are
La
we
peur
clear-eyed? I
par
still
les
see a lot of
faits,
storm clouds, sir.
la division par l'unité. As long as we don't take our democracy for granted, as long as we keep working every day to make it better, as long as our partnerships are strong, we can be confident in the future. In the words of Volodymyr Zelensky, light will win over darkness. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
A nerd.
Light over darkness. Merci beaucoup, mes amis.
I'm just trying to get the smug face. What a nerd. This guy's just a nerd. Great speech. I love democracy. What is our takeaway from that? I don't even know. Like, did anything of substantive happen in the last 15 minutes of watching that? The Libre. I didn't even notice that. I like that it just says Mexican at the bottom of the screen. I cannot remember a single thing that was just said, nor can I. Couldn't tell you. More, we got to send more weapons to Ukraine. That's kind of the main takeaway. We got to send more weapons to Ukraine. We're going to keep funding Azov Battalion. We're going to keep funding Azov Battalion until this war is over. Okay? And listen, I know it's easy to make fun of this stuff. But remember, folks, we do have a strong Social Democratic Party in Canada that is going to hold the Liberal Party accountable. Okay? I know it's easy to make fun of, but listen, don't you feel more confident when you've got the NDP in there going, making sure that, wait, what's this? Morning update. NDP will back higher military spending in exchange for Liberal support for new social programs. Ah, shucks. Ah, shucks. He does make those quirky TikToks, that's right. Now, I get you, Rob. There's literally Nazis that are supported by the U.S. and Canada, and the only headlines I see regarding that are trying to downplay the Nazi presence. Yeah, usually while also like uplifting them at the same time. And that's the absurd thing when when Trudeau tries to suggest that this is some like conflict that started a month ago. That it started like a month ago. That it's this unprovoked thing that just like it happened because Putin bad, while completely ignoring Canada's role and America's role and NATO's role, as I continually keep pointing out, in deliberately fanning the flames of this conflict over the last 10 years. It's not like we're just sending money and funds to Azov Battalion. No, we've been doing that for years now. This has been reported out. This is not disinformatia. It's not a Russian conspiracy theory. The Canadian government over the last 10 years has been arming and training these neo-Nazi militia groups such as Azov Battalion. And that's why it's
count on me.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous
to talk you through all this.
To hear Trudeau frame this as being some random event that's just happened because democracy bad, or because Putin hates democracy. Like it's as simple and fucking idiotic and childish as the whole like they hate our freedom. They hate our freedom, folks. That's why Putin's doing this. He just hates freedom. He hates democracy. It's just as simplistic and childish to suggest that it's like, oh yeah, he just hates freedom so much that that's the way this is going on. Completely whitewashing his own government's role. His own government's role, along with Deputy Prime Minister. They're jealous of our freedom. That's exactly it. I mean, it's just as childish. His own government's role, along with Deputy Prime Minister and granddaughter of Ukrainian fascist Michael Chomiak, Chrystia Freeland, the role that they've played in deliberately egging this shit on. GMO Radio, thank you very much for the gifted sub to Bup Dragon. Thank you. So yeah, this is the next part of this deal that the NDP has made. And remember, we looked through these new social programs that were announced yesterday. Remember? This just like neoliberal, means-tested, affordable access bullshit. You know, our democracy, fixing our democracy by making it a 3-day, doing nothing to change our actual fake system. And making it like a 3-day vote. You've got 3 days to vote, and you have mail-in ballots. You can go to different polling locations and stuff, while not doing anything to address our fucking completely broken first past the post non-democratic system that we have. Yeah, this is means-tested bullshit, which is literally a step back from what even the Liberals have campaigned on in the past, to say nothing of the NDP. And this is the deal that they've cut. The brilliant, genius 4D chess negotiators in the NDP. These are the new social programs that they're not backing higher military spending. And like, this is like, I don't know, I'm sure Jess, I mean, she's a writer, Canadian Authors Association, Blood is Thicker. I don't want to pick on Jess too much here, but I think this is indicative of certain kind of liberal thought about this, which I think we should unpack a little bit. So Jess, nothing against, we don't need to target and harass Jess or anything like that. Military spending must be a priority. Russia doesn't recognize our northern border, and we're one bad Republican president away from trouble with our southern border. So how much military spending is it going to be for us to defend ourselves from the possibility of invasion by the most advanced and well-funded military in human history directly on our southern border, which is entirely undefended? What increase in military spending is going to address that? Do we think here? It's like the longest undefended border in the world, and we're gonna spend a couple $1 billion extra in military spending, and that's gonna dissuade the United States if they ever feel like coming once the water wars pick up in seriousness. They're gonna say, oh, we don't want to mess with those Canadians. They're spending an extra couple billion in military spending now. We don't want to fuck with these guys too much. Like, or Russia. Really? Is this what we're gonna be doing now? We're going to be committing to more austerity so we can beef up our military so we can defend ourselves in these countries. All the leverage in the world, and this is the deal. The only demand they should have been electoral reform, but they really never do politics. NDP, never do politics. Yeah, sorry, Rob, if we wanted to invade your ass, we would have done it already. Canada doesn't stand a chance. Well, that's not true because, Yash, but we just, right now, I mean, we're still basically a de facto northern province of the United States anyway. We basically we follow whatever the fucking United States State Department tells us. Our whole fake democracy is in place to like make sure that resources are being funneled to the United States at all times. Once we got a lot of fresh water up here, though, and once that really becomes a problem for the United States, I don't doubt that they will get to that point as well. Once it starts to get really dire in the America, they're going to start looking to the north and being like, okay, maybe we should kind of formalize this whole thing, this whole arrangement we got going on now. So this is like, yeah, this is our military spending has got to be a priority. And we have the NDP with all the leverage in the world. They can literally decide to collapse the government at any time and force an election. All the leverage in the world. And we get a bunch of means-tested bullshit. The possibility of affordable access to means-tested bullshit at possibly later this decade. And in exchange for higher military spending and God knows what else. I saw an infographic that said 99% of Canadians live within 100 feet of the U.S. border. Yeah, Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa, all south of Seattle. Fake country, folks. Fake country. Quite literally. We will. I have no doubt once this stuff really starts to kick off, we will just like formalize this whole thing. We'll just become the 51st state. Also, we have to stop letting them get away with pretending Putin is some raging old-timey imperialist. I know it's a touchy subject, but come on, we have to attend to what facts we actually have. Well, I mean, even if they wanted to make that accusation, you don't have credibility to accuse Putin of that kind of thing anyways, when you yourself engages in this very same activity constantly. Or our southern partner in the United States, which we're totally okay with. Like talking about lethal aid, not only we're sending a lethal aid to Azov Battalion and have been for many years, and as well as training them, also sending lethal aid to Saudi Arabia while they commit genocide as well. And Israel, while they bomb the West Bank 4 or 5 fucking times a year. So we don't have a ton of credibility to call out this kind of evil imperialism when we literally like benefit from the ultimate imperialist country. You know, the country that has 800 military bases all around the world. That's not Russia. That's actually the US. The country that controls like the information and like for most of the world is the spread of information. The country that controls the global economic financial system. That's not Russia. That's the United States. I'm taking my hydration seriously now, folks. I'm really taking my hydration seriously. Should you have a third coffee? I don't know. That's coming from a big caffeine head, Nicole. That's a lot of coffee. You're going to be very jittery. But the thing is, when the U.S. does it, no matter how many people die, it's an oopsie. I mean, that's a great... I'm sure you all are familiar with this tweet that was going around yesterday. Like, this is why I have a really hard time taking these fucking Americans seriously. When they condemn the atrocities of Vladimir Putin. And they talk about the horrible Russian imperialism. Like, this is 23,000 likes on this tweet. Like, this is your brain on American exceptionalism. People in the United States actually believe this. There are a lot of folks who rightly criticize the U.S. military for civilian casualties. We mess up sometimes. Do you know how fucking sociopathic that is? That is so fucking sociopathic. Now you're seeing what happens when a modern army doesn't care about or purposely creates civilian casualties. We are not the same. You know what? No, you're not the same. America and Russia, not the same. America, significantly worse. Significantly, and it's not close. It's not close either. It's like, this is honestly unbelievable to me, though. We mess up sometimes. And we often invest, like with the Kunduz hospital airstrike, which I talk about often. As you know, we investigate ourselves and determine that it wasn't a war crime. Right? There's never any international sanctions. There's never any investigation. The UN doesn't talk about it. The EU doesn't talk about it. NATO doesn't talk about it. We look into it ourselves. We investigate ourselves and say, we messed this one up. Sorry. I think in that case, too, the families of the people that were murdered got a couple $1,000 as well. So there you go. Sorry you lost your father or your mother or your aunt or uncle or sister or cousin or nephew. Sorry about that. Our bad. We really messed this one up. Here's like $2,000. I'll give you $2,000 to shut the fuck up about this. We mess up sometimes. That is sick. That's a sick thing to believe. It's truly fucking sick. Did they post a follow-up to this? Oh my fucking god, this person is sick. I should have known this would bring out the US is the devil trolls. Oh, R.I.P. my Menchies. The true victim here. Thank you for recognizing the true fucking victim. The Angry Staffer Twitter account. If you can't understand the difference between collateral damage and targeting citizens because it's part of your military doctrine, I can't help you. I've seen firsthand how the U.S. troops anguish over civilian casualties. This is a sick person. This is the dronies, folks. The dronies. They're back on their bullshit. Remember, these are the people, these liberals that call us authoritarians. They say that we support, political violence. No, as I've said many, many times, this shit always comes out. No one fucking loves violence and death and destruction more than these people. They just worship it. They fetishize it. While wiping their hands of it and pretending that they care about human rights and these fucking enlightened liberal values. Give me a goddamn break. Oh, I'm sure the U.S. troops they just anguish over these casualties. Jesus Christ. The fucking dronies are back on their bullshit. What has to go? Like, this is what American exceptionalism does to your brain. This is like a least propagandized American moment. America complains about propaganda in other countries. Seriously? How propagandized do you have to be to look at the long history of U.S. military imperialism and the brute mass death campaigns and mass murder campaigns that they've gleefully taken part in on a totally bipartisan basis? And say, like, oh, it's just collateral damage. It's just collateral damage. I've seen U.S. troops are very anguished over this. Yeah, of course. The scene how they anguish over civilian casualties. Insert photos from Abu Ghraib.
The size of the account.
They seem very
It's all a
anguished.
sports game for liberals and right-wingers. Ah.
Or those fucking war criminals that Trump pardoned. That war criminal guy that was like stabbing prisoners and like cutting off heads and stuff. Yeah, they're really anguished over this. They're really anguished. Thank you, Useless, for the 200 bits. Eddie Gallagher. Yeah, that's right. These people are sick. Seriously. The only collateral damage we should be talking about is the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Thank you, Pissed. But Rob, Russians don't have emotions. They're just robots who don't care for human life. That's right. And the families of dead relatives can't do shit with your anguish. Yeah, I'm sure this is really a comfort. This is really a comfort to the literally thousands of families that have lost, again, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, aunts, uncles, nephews, cousins, to drone strikes of like weddings and funerals, fucking bombing hospitals, pharmaceutical to say nothing of like not even this collateral military damage, but sanctions that killed thousands of kids. It's literally starving Afghan citizens right now, Afghan kids. Yeah, hundreds of thousands of families just in the 21st century, probably millions. And if you want to go back, we can continue going back. All the way back to 1945 at the end of the war. This is what American exceptionalism does to your brain. Jesus Christ. I honestly can't wrap my head around like how anyone can go through life thinking like this. This is a sick person. This is a sick individual. But you see, U.S. military doctrine is don't kill civilians. Yeah, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you, America. The dronies. This is why they're the dronies. This is why I don't, when people like this, like, say shit about leftists or say, like, oh, you actually do support imperialism. You don't care. You are authoritarian. You don't care. It's like, fuck, like, again, no one fetishizes and worships violence like these people do. It's the smugness of it that really drives me crazy too, because these people tell themselves that they're these champions of like human rights and all these wonderful, enlightened, liberal values. It's the fucking smugness of it that really makes me feel crazy. Yeah, we literally bombed a wedding, and instead of killing Gaddafi, we killed like his grandmother and a bunch of kids. Which happens routinely. That's not the only wedding that's been bombed by America just in the last decade. And not even Gaddafi's family, but Libya in general still doesn't have a functional government. That they can't even see the bias that makes them wonder why they think their side is uniquely right and virtuous in all things. Should make them wonder, you're right. It's imperialism over and over again, Christian missionaries, civilizing savages, etc., etc. I mean, that's exactly what this idea that is baked into this kind of like liberal thought. This is word for word, like you're saying, Bad Bunny. Like, this is exactly what the British were saying during the hundreds of years of colonialism in Britain as well. You know, we're spreading civilization to India. This kind of stuff, while they're stealing trillions of dollars in wealth. This is like part of liberal thought while they're engaging in some of the most horrific crimes you can imagine. And they tell themselves they're doing it for these enlightened reasons. And they're spreading these beautiful ideas of human rights and democracy and all that stuff. It is colonizer brain, that's right, yeah. My boy Alain Badiou has a great critic of liberal human rights and how they justify horrific acts of violence by the fact that they are out of our hands or those people are simply not visible. It gives a moral cover for the imperial court to justify its brutality and not change anything. Well, yeah, and you're seeing that as well because all our brutality is focused on the global south, who just like don't count, I guess, as people. They don't count in the same way. And then you see when Russia targets a country not in the global south, even if it is criminal, even if it is violent, which it is, that's why we treat this so differently. And that's why we see all that coverage of liberals in the media being like, well, it's not like this is one of these uncivilized countries in the Middle East or anything. Like this is it's like an actual country with real people in it. That's why Russia's getting sanctioned and the United States doesn't get sanctioned.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The Phoenix program was specifically designed to kill VCI or Viet Cong infrastructure, aka civilians, and that program has been applied to all post-Vietnam insurgencies. Yeah, and not just killing, disappearing people, torturing, performing sick psychological and experiments on them. The sickest shit you can possibly imagine. I don't know if Silver's in the chat. Silver, this is his main area of expertise. Ukraine's imperial core. Well, I think that's what makes Ukraine an interesting thing, is that it's kind of neither. It's right on the outskirts. And there's people within Ukraine and within the West that want Ukraine to be part of the West. And that's why it's being used as like a battleground for this battle between these bigger countries in Russia and in the United States, the West. Because they've been wanting to pull it into the Western alliance in order to destabilize Russia. Russia obviously doesn't, as said, that will never happen. That's a red line for us. And that's exactly why Ukraine has been this battleground over the last couple of years, for that exact reason. You know, I have a bit of content to look at right now that's like extremely spicy. I don't even know if it's a good idea to look at it. I don't even know if it's a good idea to look at it. It's not spicy in that it's like there's any gore or anything like that. But it is very spicy though. The Hill Dog said just turn it into Afghanistan. That's the plan. That's right. Listen, I saw this video and I don't know who this guy is. Okay, I have no idea who this guy is. I just saw this video. I'm not familiar with this individual. I don't know who it is. But I noticed that in this speech they said a number of true things that I think are important for people to hear. Maybe someone can let me know who this is. I have no idea. I have no idea who this individual is. But I think this is still, there's some messages in this speech here that are important to take a look at. No idea who this character is at all.
يوجد لديه عدو واحد هو كل من يقف في وجه مصالحه المادية، فيعني لا الشيوعية ولا الإسلام ولا النازية ولا الصين ولا روسيا ولا غيرها هم أعداء للغرب. إذا كانوا يلبوا المصالح فهم أصدقاء، إذا كانوا يقفوا ضد المصالح فهم أعداء، يعني المبادئ صفر. لكن آخر حقيقة وهي من أشد الحقائق قبحا وقلة من الناس تعرف عنها، هي كذبة أن الغرب ضد النازية وأن الصهيونية ضد النازية. القلة تعرف بأن النازيين في أوكرانيا، وهي منظمات نازية عملت بشكل وثيق مع هتلر أمنيا وعسكريا وعقائديا، عندما انتهت الحرب العالمية الثانية أخرج القادة البعض منهم إلى أوروبا والبعض منهم إلى أمريكا. وفي الخمسينيات طالبت CIA الإدارة الأمريكية أن يرفع الحظر عن هذه المجموعات النازية لأنها ضرورة لأمريكا في أوكرانيا التي كان جزء من الاتحاد السوفيتي. وما يؤكد هذا الكلام اليوم، هذا الكلام التاريخي، أن زيلينسكي هو صهيوني يهودي، ولكنه يدعم المنظمات القومية المتطرفة التي قاتلت في الحرب العالمية الثانية عندما دخل هتلر، وشارك جزء منها في المذابح ضد اليهود. فكيف يكون هذا الصهيوني اليهودي داعم لهذه المنظمات؟ والغرب يدعم هذه المنظمات التي تسمى اليوم منظمة آزوف اليمينية، وإسرائيل الصهيونية التي تجتر ذكرى البكاء على ضحايا المحرقة تدعم زعيما يدعم النازية التي قتلت اليهود. هذا يؤكد بأن الغرب يكذب في كل ما يقول، والغرب لا يهمه سوى أن يسيطر على العالم، أن يتحكم بالعالم، وأن ينهب الموارد.
Not really familiar with that character. No idea who that guy is. Wouldn't say I agree with everything that was just said in that speech at all. I think it's a piece of content that we can take a look at, I think. You know? There are some things we can that I think are worth taking a second look at. You know, I wouldn't say that everything word for word I agreed with in there. But I thought that was just an interesting perspective. Not familiar with who that is, no. Not familiar with who that character is. I really, really have to go to the bathroom. I'm very hydrated right now. I'm almost too hydrated. Let me just do that, okay? Because I can't even. Normally, I would like wait. Normally, I would wait to try to, chill for the stream a little bit. Even saying the word stream is tricky for me right now. Let me just take a brief break, okay? I'll take a brief break. I'll come back. I'll chill for the stream a little bit and try to get some subs going. We're pretty low on slubs. And then we can talk about Walter Rodney, okay? I'll talk to you in a minute. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Here are 200 subs. Wait, Monka HMM.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Pee pee poo poo.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
L L L L L L L L L L L L L L.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Bark, 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 bark.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
More subs. More.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Woo loo 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 loo.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Ow sow 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 sow.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
AOC 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 AOC.
Oh my god, that totally matched up with the beat, that one. Oh my goodness. Look at all this hype. I come back and there's all kinds of hype. Gonna go back here. Kijiji Genie. I don't think I thanked you when you gifted that sub 15 minutes ago. I'm sorry. Kijiji Genie, thank you for the gifted sub. Metal Dipshit gave with 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much, Metal Dipshit. Thank you as well to 10,000 Sandwiches for the gifted sub. Thank you, 10,000 Sandwiches. Thank you, Useless Teammate, for the 200 friend coin. Kijiji, I didn't forget. Okay, I got to it. Still counts. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Bad Bunny.
You can count on me
for the 200 friend
good old
coin.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Hello, Worm God. It's me, Margaret.
Let me turn this down here. Outrun, thank you so much for the 12 months resub at tier 2, 1 entire year of Outrun. I really appreciate it, Outrun. I really appreciate you in particular. Thank you. Gen X Bushy, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Gen X Bushy. Nicole gave another 200 bits. Thank you, Nicole. Pissed cheered 200 bits. Thank you very much, valued community member Pissed. Sean Meat cheered 200 bits. Thank you, Sean Meat. Sea of Noise gifted a sub. Thank you, Sea of Noise. Useless with another 200 bits. Thank you, Useless. Ghost cheered 300 bits. Thank you very much, Ghost. Some attempted groovering that was going on there. Thank you, Bad Bunny, again. What generosity from Bad Bunny. I really appreciate that, Nicole. Thank you for the 200 bits and for trying to orchestrate the hype train. Yeah, I saw that. Don't think I didn't see that. I think that's everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for subscribing. Okay. Rob, I think it's so cool you have a community around you that will start a hype train just to fuck with you. That's love, baby. It's true. Sometimes they even interrupt me. It's very frustrating, actually. I hate that. I hate that when I'm trying to talk and I get rudely interrupted with people donating bits and subs to the channel. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. Those McCain Deep and Delicious cakes are very tasty. Banned Bad Bunny mod Husker Do says Henlo. Henlo Husker. He's using some kind of complicated VPN system to access the stream. You see that screen where like the red lines bouncing to all the different countries and cities and stuff? That's how Husker's accessing this content. It's kind of elite hacking that only he's capable of. Very cool. Yeah, there you go, Yashbut. You can join the Discord there at that link. What time is it? Almost 2? Okay. So we got lots of time. Lots of time. Yeah, I think we can... I would like to talk about Walter Rodney. I got some Walter Rodney content to take a look at. And International People's Assembly has a live stream with VJ right now. NATO versus peace. Well, that sounds good too. There's also talking about Walter Rodney. There's a whole VJ clip with Verso Books talking about Walter Rodney's book on the Russian Revolution, which is probably good with VJ. We got too much content to look at now. We got too much content going on. And by the way, in case I didn't, I'm probably not hyping this up enough. But just so everyone knows, next Monday, or was it this coming Monday? Monday, March 28th. Monday, March 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern. On this very stream, we will be talking to Rania Khalek of Breakthrough News, a really wonderful journalist. Rania is going to be joining this very program on Monday at 1 p.m. If you're not aware of that, make sure you're here for that. It's going to be a really great conversation. Ronnie has been doing some really amazing work over the last couple of weeks, which we've been looking at a lot of it right here with what she's been doing on Breakthrough News, both in the run-up to this Ukraine invasion and since it's been going on, has just been excellent at providing. I feel like I am so much more knowledgeable about the context of this conflict and the historical context since engaging with some of the content that Ronnie has been putting out with people like Brian Becker than I was previously. And it's given us all the tools that we need to understand exactly why this stuff is going on. And the tools we need not to fall into this trap of the pro-NATO trap, which a lot of people are getting sucked into, unfortunately. So Ronnie is going to be joining the show Monday, March 28th, 1 p.m., Ronnie Akalik on TRRS. Okay? Rania also, incidentally, a woman. So, not that it matters, but just throwing that out there as well. Just throwing that out there as well. Excellent for including perspectives from the global south too. I mean, that's exactly why I really appreciate the journalism that she does. Again, if you're just listening to the Western sources on Ukraine or any other issue, you're going to have a really Western-centric colonizer mindset version of these global events. We have to pay close attention to what people in the global south say about this and other issues to really have a fully comprehensive understanding of a lot of all of these different geopolitical issues. You know, that's what we try to do there. That's why I really appreciate the journalism that Rania does. Ronnie, who actually goes to these places, who goes to Cuba and has been traveling through Africa and talking to people. You know, we can't really have a comprehensive view of these geopolitical issues without that viewpoint. And Rania does a lot of really great work bringing that viewpoint to us. So that should be wonderful. So yeah, we got some time left. Thanks everyone for contributing to the hype train and the subscription stuff. I will have to do some more shilling later in the stream, but I think we can proceed. We can proceed with the scheduled content. Robin, Jesus Christ. Would you say you're the sexiest or one of the sexiest anti-imperialist voices on Twitch? I mean, I would leave that for others to decide. If you want my personal opinion, obviously I'm biased. I'd say I belong in the conversation. Okay? I'm not going to make any definitive, declarative statements about this. I think I belong in the conversation, and that's all I'll say. I'll let others be the judge of the rankings and who is ranked in what spot. A seat at the table. Thank you. Yes, that's what I'm saying. On the on the Mount Rushmore of sexy anti-imperialists. I would hope so. I would hope so. God damn it, G Cluppy. Oh my god. Okay. Jesus. What? Let me check this out here. My watch later list is all fucked up. Okay. So again, it's Walter Rodney's birthday. Walter Rodney, famous Guyanese Marxist historian, author of the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Just a vital resource for people that want to learn this history. A strong critic of capitalism. He was assassinated at the age of 38, I believe. Had many, many more years to go. And was assassinated after becoming really politically involved, after moving back to Guyana. Walter Rodney, another figure that once you learn more about him, understand exactly why he was a threat to the established order. You know what? Just looking for the title here. So yeah, I thought again, it's Walter Rodney's birthday today. Everyone should read How Europe Underdeveloped Africa and the rest of Rodney's writing. I have the book back here. I'm going to read it myself. I will read it. I am going to read it. We should all do this, but let's just watch this documentary to celebrate Walter Rodney's birthday. It's called In the Sky's Wild Noise. 30-minute long film. I think it should be good stuff. R.I.P. Walter Rodney. Again, many years to go. He should have been with us, which is very, it's sad to think about. Let's watch this, though. I think it's going to be wonderful. Tarme, I agree. I've been back into Fortnite. I love this new season so far. I love the no building. I've always hated the building. I'm an anti-builder. I really like this new season. It's been very fun. I hope they keep this gameplay mode in Fortnite. If I had more time, I would probably like to play it on the stream. I don't know. If I've got another 30 minutes and I can meet the sub goal, perhaps I can play some Fortnite at the end of the stream. Stupid dweebs build, dweebs out. That's what I've been saying. But let's not... When are you streaming Disco Elysium? I did a whole first part of that and I just never picked it up. I did it like 6 months ago and I've not gone back to it. It's more about the time of day, right? Just the amount of time. I would love to do more streaming and more more gaming on stream. It's just like it's literally not having the fucking time to do it. I have played through Disco Elysium, but I started a streaming playthrough of it, and I only did one segment of it. Anyway, okay, Walter Rodney. Let's not talk about gaming. This is going to be really great stuff. In the Skies, Wild Noise, this documentary on Dr. Walter Rodney, born today. And taken from us too soon. Here we go. No subtitles available, unfortunately.
Nobody else can liberate the working class but the working class. Nobody else gives somebody else freedom. Freedom is something for which you fight, and then you win. If someone gives it to you as a gift, it is not really freedom.
Thank you for being a comrade.
Thank you, Godzone Drunk. Thank you very much for the 4 months of Prime. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And it's my pleasure. You Google Walter Rodney and one of the top results are NSA archives about him. I mean, and someone that absolutely belongs in the tradition of, Pan-African anti-colonialists and socialists like Lumumba, like Sankara, who were assassinated as well. And you see exactly how in the post-colonial years, how these men had a real solution. They had a real analysis of like what had been done to Africa, and a real solution that involved cooperation, solidarity, and you see how important it was for the neo-colonialists to ensure that that viewpoint was never allowed to fester and was never allowed to spread. And then anyone that reached a certain level of prominence advocating for this kind of Pan-African solidarity, anti-colonialism, was a threat and was treated like a threat. And that's why I'm gladly in the U.S. is evil camp. And it's a whole other facet of this conversation about collateral damage. If you think that U.S. evil just extends to civilians that happen to be killed in U.S. imperialist wars, in Vietnam or in Korea, or anywhere else, in Iraq or Afghanistan or anyone else, it's not just about collateral damage. Think about all the victims of neo-colonialism. Right? Think about all the people that, it's not just about people that died in wars, but people that have died of starvation, kids being forced to work in like cobalt mines, in these countries after the U.S. enforced a very strict political vision on these countries who tried to liberate themselves from the shackles of colonialism. It's not just about collateral damage from bombing raids and stuff like that. And we're talking about tens of millions of people here when you get into that. Tens of millions of people. Yeah, listening to the Jakarta Method on audiobooks, and definitely read the Jakarta Method and then try and tell yourself that it's about collateral damage, or we made a couple of mistakes. We did a few oopsies here and there. And that's only really scratching the surface of the fucking evil that this country has stood for over the last several decades.
In our society at the present time, some specific rights which had been won through struggle by the people in the colonial period are now in the process of being eroded. One takes the most obvious, the electoral process. In Guyana, it is now, I think, widely known inside the country and outside of the country that first of all, the Americans intervened along with the British to abort the democratic process from 1953 onwards. And secondly, that once the present government got into power, it extended the scale of electoral fraud so that we cannot claim at the present time to be a politically enfranchised people. We cannot claim to have chosen our own national government. And that is one level. Below that level, you find that there is reproduced in every facet of the national life the same anti-democratic tendencies. So that there are no local government elections, for instance. They have local government elections are postponed every time they become due with ease, with no concern whatsoever, with no reaction. There are no elections taking place within certain trade unions, where workers at that basic level should be choosing their representatives to deal with their material interests.
Yeah, no free will. Capitalist diffusion of responsibility is a real phenomenon, but only because idiots think it's real. Like somehow under socialism, because you have a plan, it's all your fault, it fails, but under capitalism, someone else is always to blame. That's what I mean. The tens of millions of people that die under capitalism, well, that's just, they're not victims of capitalism, right? That's just collateral damage, or you might want to call it. Or it's just, it's like no one's responsible. The system is not responsible. No individual is responsible because we're all separate individuals. We're all atomized and compartmentalized. So if you die in this system, it's your own responsibility. It's your personal responsibility. Just like it's your personal responsibility to raise yourself up by the bootstraps, it's your own personal responsibility if you starve to death, because it must mean you were doing something wrong. You didn't work hard enough. But yeah, when someone catches a cold and fucking sneezes in the Soviet Union, that gets added to this ledger, this black book of communism ledger, a victim of communism. And none of the victims of capitalism just don't get counted. Yeah, and we're talking about tens of millions of people over the last several decades. Like unfathomable numbers of people.
And once that anti-democratic principle is established, we see then step by step we move backwards. And I say backwards very deliberately. These were not rights or privileges which were handed to us by the British. The right to have your union and to have a democratic union was won through struggle in this very century.
Including all the poor Nazis that fell victim to communism, exactly.
The right to have democratic elections was won only in the late 1940s and in 1953 when there was universal adult suffrage.
Also on a superficial level, why do all great revolutionaries look cool as shit always? I agree. Couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously his contributions are on an intellectual level, on a revolutionary level, the most important. He had an insane drip as well. Just insane.
So that these recently conquered rights are now in the process of being withheld, eroded, dissipated in one form or fashion. In the early years of independence, or the last years of colonialism, we had certain illusions that having inherited the formal modes of political procedure from the British, that of necessity we would not follow the paths that had been followed by other Latin American territories or by countries such as Haiti, Rwanda, Duvalier, and the Dominican Republic and Cuba and the like. And as people begin to recognize that many of these authoritarian traits and repressive institutions can and are emerging in our society, I feel that there is a growing awareness of the need to attempt to combat this repression. One of the significant areas in which repression is taking place is the whole area of the media, the newspapers and the radios. We find that since the government has taken over the papers, it has ostensibly nationalized these newspapers, meaning in the interest of the nation, but in practice it is specifically in the interest of the ruling party. As the Prime Minister of this country himself once cynically remarked, he says, the government never tells the newspapers what to print. They simply tell them what not to print. And then they go beyond that. They're not prepared to allow competing centers of information so that they utilize illegal machinery to crush things like the Mirror, the People's Progressive Party's newspaper, the Day Clean, which is a news sheet printed by the Working People's Alliance. They had made it impossible for a political organization to print a newspaper. That organization then resorted to mimeographing a sheet, but the government considered it absolutely essential to continue to persecute, to go to the level of seizing typewriters, to make it impossible for people to type and produce a mimeograph sheet. The point is that elements that clearly purport to be anti-socialist are not pursued in the society with the same vigor. So it indicates the direction of the attack that is being borne by the government. It's not against reactionary elements, it's not against imperialist elements, it's really against anti-imperialist and progressive forces.
Okay, so a couple interesting things that I wanted to get to here in the chat. So No Free Will says, I was in Ghana this year for a project and it was very educational. See how much people can do with so little and how much harder they work for the little they have. The church is very powerful there now, to the point that they flex their power by passing a law making it illegal to even discuss homosexuality on Facebook, etc., or any other media. And you can see that's by design as well, and how like missionaries and like the church setting up shop in these countries is always like this first stage of colonialism. And And you can see even when colonialism like ostensibly goes away, that element is like remains, and you can still have that control through these kind of tendrils that begin with the missionaries and begin with setting up churches in these places. You said that's one interesting thing about Vietnam you learn about as well. It's like there's always the first stage. It's the first stage of colonialism, sending these missionaries and starting these communes and converting people. And then when the military starts showing up, you've got a kind of population that's more receptive to these messages. And you've got a population that's kind of more interested in these values. Yeah, get them to believe in a God that looks like the conqueror. That's right. It's this first tendril of colonialism. And this is an interesting point, too, I wanted to get to as well. Detrius, South Africa was actually a good example of socialist and communist coalition and struggle against imperialism. Communists, revolutionary socialists, and anarchists all against segregation and exploitation. And that's absolutely true. Also an example of the way the powerful and insidious nature of Western imperialism, where even after South Africa was able to overthrow the apartheid government and alerted the whole world to the evils of apartheid, even as people like places in the West were still spent years and years trying to, continue upholding their apartheid government and supporting the apartheid government. Even after this became completely untenable and they were overthrown, you still had imperialism played a strong role in the post-apartheid movement as well through institutions like the IMF, who limited the ability of Mandela and this post-apartheid government, limited their ability to go through with programs such as land reform. And the more radical reforms that they wanted to do were completely hampered at every step by Western imperialism through institutions like the IMF, who forced them to pay off the massive IMF debts that had been taken out by the apartheid government. Once the anti-apartheid government was put in place, they were still on the hook for all these IMF loans, and it completely hamstrung their ability to carry out these big, bold, progressive anti-colonialist reforms that they wanted to do. So when you talk about imperialism, remember, it's not just about invading another country. It's not just about the military, but it's also through these systems of control, economic control, and information control.
In Guyana, when we speak of civil liberties and civil rights, people are beginning to understand that the most fundamental of these is the right to work in our society. And what is occurring in Guyana is that the government is making political capital out of the indefensible position of one who is either unemployed or is very close to the line of being unemployed.
I'm slowly working my way through first 5K Years of Debt by Graeber. Pretty much all about that. Very enlightening. That's another one I got to put on my pile. Some loans more like a freedom tax, yeah. And there's a book about global development called That's Kicking Away the Ladder that covers some of this. And I'm sure also an essential resource on this subject, right? By the man himself. How Europe underdeveloped Africa. All part of that same system. It's all part of that same system of control.
Guyana is a small country. We have to be realistic about that. It means that if you're unemployed in one area, you don't sort of leave the East Coast and go and get a job on the West Coast, or leave the North and get a job in the South. You don't leave one industrial occupation and get a job in another. To be excluded from one specific area of employment often means total exclusion from the employment market. And since the government itself has taken over so many facets of economic life, has nationalized the bauxite, has nationalized sugar, has nationalized a number of private firms, justifiably so, it has taken up a position as the principal, far and away the largest single employer in the country. Consequently, the ground is really set for the utilization of this device of the party card, of political control by means of denying the right to work. And it is a frightening situation in its own right, because in all reality, it is unnecessary to threaten a man's life and liberty if by the fundamental threat to his capacity to earn and survive, you can reduce him to a state of submission. And this is continually what is taking place. It does not appear on the surface to be as frightening as the overt exploitation and oppression of the South African prisons, or the Chilean torture cells, or the Brazilian torture cells. But from the viewpoint of the mass of the population in the country and their capacity to express themselves politically, this denial of the right to work is a new frightening dimension of our political scene. Even as a critic of the government of this country, myself and others in the Working People's Alliance would not expect that the economy automatically would transform itself from a colonial economy, from a dependent economy, to an independent, functioning, socialist, integrated economy. We do not expect this because we understand the dynamics of the international capitalist system into which we are caught up. Many people are, of course, fully aware that Guyana has made claims to having broken with imperialism, or having the intention even of breaking with imperialism. What we find in our actual economic relationships is a very marginal shift for the sake of convenience towards an expansion of trade with socialist countries and a nominal takeover of large sectors of the economy, but not based on a firm commitment to break the ties by which our working class was continually exporting surplus to foreign capital. Consequently, at the last budget, it was evident that the rate of repayment of interest as well as the actual payments for nationalization was so high that it constituted the same drain, if not greater, than it was in the period of direct foreign ownership. This is the sort of contradiction in which we find ourselves, partly because of historical forces, but also because the class in power doesn't have a conception of where it is going, how it will extricate itself from certain relationships, and indeed one wonders whether fundamentally the petty bourgeois class really has a commitment to extricate itself from international capital.
Food plenty in the market to kill GMC dumping. Money that never buy because you're poor like me, you're black like me, and poverty is your legacy. Last election was 64. Something then was selection. That's all about corruption. Poor like me, you're black like me, and poverty is your legacy. Yet we have democracy and can't do nothing. We have neither the power nor capacity. Code of Conduct Act, start cut down corruption tree, Limmerfall, Brabant Gap, libel, scandal, they clean in court, mirror in court, you see in jail, can't get no bail. So, Kuni man, Buckman, black man, Chinese man, bury the act, renounce starvation, denounce corruption, announce revolution, cause you're poor like me, you're black like me, and poverty is your legacy.
government has put the whole nation in a position in which it has to pay in order that foreign capital or foreign multinational interests should still continue to draw surplus from our economy in indirect means. But having put the whole nation in hock, as it were, the government goes further. It makes certain distinctions which allow a small segment of the population to pass the real burden down to the vast majority of the direct producers. The key question then, is there any basis for suggesting that the working people themselves are now either in greater control of the processes, or are they in a better position to recoup for themselves the product of their own labor? And I would suggest that the answer to that is a negative, and that is the answer which workers give. This is the answer which bauxite workers are giving. This is the answer which sugar workers are giving, and the record is clear in terms of the actions which these workers themselves are taking. We then have to ask, is it that the entire Guyanese nation bears the strain? Or isn't it that a particular segment of the population is itself in a position to pass the burden down to the vast majority? They do so in terms of their high salaries. They do so in terms of various quasi-legal and illegal manipulations, either in direct control of the economy or sometimes in conjunction with the small private capitalist sector which exists. The well-known tale of the rake-offs and the like. Okay. So the political elite ensures that they do not suffer from the pressure which is brought to bear on the nation as a whole. And this is again where the class question comes to the fore. Economic crisis can always be measured in terms of statistical indices. But more important still, people in their day-to-day lives will know what it means to be living in a period of economic crisis. The people will know, the housewives will know what happens to be the price of goods in the shop at a given moment. They will know what items are short. They will know how difficult it is to move from one point to another because there is no public transportation or because it is entirely inadequate. And it is really these things that surround and dictate the lives of people. The fact of having to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning to get to work at 8, not because of any great distance, but because of a totally inadequate transportation system. The fact of leaving work in the afternoon and not getting home until the night, precisely because of that same transportation system. It seems to me that in many respects, the working people of the country are showing by their actions and showing by their day-to-day utterances their awareness of the way in which all these indices are real to them in a day-to-day sense. Their children show it in terms of malnutrition. Their old people show it in terms of inadequate medical attention. And one really doesn't say that this is a unique situation. It is found in so many parts of the third world. What makes it in a sense unique is that we are speaking in a political context in which the regime in power makes certain claims to egalitarianism.
We breaking some news here? We breaking some news? This is really wonderful, by the way. Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, has passed away. And really, I just want to say, R.I.P. Bozo. Don't care. ratio plus L plus you just died plus you're an imperialist plus you supported sanctions that killed millions of Iraqi children. Anyway.
Claims to justice produces the very fancy brochures which would suggest that there is no such thing as malnutrition, that there is no such thing as starvation, debilitation, shortages, and the like, when a glance at the country, as it were, a reference to the living experience of people would show all of this to be false. The crux of the matter is this: the Guyana economy is in crisis. But over and beyond that, the working people are in the greatest financial and economic straits because the burden of oppression is constantly shifted down onto the shoulders of the working people. Guyana is known internationally as a place in which racial...
I've done the risk ratio and find her death acceptable for the sake of the larger goal. Yeah, I was doing the mental calculation just now as well, and I agree with that. She's already in that special place in hell for women who don't support other women. Correct. Yeah.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual,
Chloe
and I
raid.
found this.
Thanks for the raid, Chloe. Lovely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chloe. Were you doing Life is Strange? Is that what's going on? Thanks for the raid. I appreciate it. We're just watching this documentary on Walter Rodney. It's Walter Rodney's birthday, so I wanted to watch this little clip about Walter Rodney, author of the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and a number of other really important historical texts. Really good stuff so far. Walter Rodney, of course, from Guyana, was assassinated in Guyana in
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
1980. Oh boy, what's this? Pinklon, thanks for gifting a sub to Chloe. Thank you, Pinklon. Yeah, looking at Kissinger, I mean, this motherfucker can't last that much longer. Look at the guy. Rodney, of course, assassinated in Guyana in 1980. But I think everything that Walter says about his home country and the place where he's from, this class analysis can be, it can be used anywhere, right? It's the same class analysis. So really, really interesting stuff here.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Ashley. Ashley, thank you very much for the 3 months at Tier 1. Ashley Bean Pie, thank you very much.
Strife has taken place. Community violence reached a particular pitch. One of the few third world countries that we associate with racial violence between two non-white peoples. And of course, the government in power claims that since they came to power, since the PNC came to power, racialism has
they're talking about public transit.
been dismissed in Guyana. The problem has been resolved.
Talking about how public transit being terrible and how it's like that when you're trying to make a living and work, how it steals time from you, right? It's really interesting the way that like work from home currently as well has like, you see so many people that are just like, my job finishes at 5 and at 5:01 I'm at my own home and I'm free to do what I want. How we've like internalized this idea of commuting, which we don't get paid or reimbursed for when you work at like an office. Some people commute like what, an hour and a half, 2 hours each way daily, which has just become part of the unpaid labor that you have to do. And now where it's like, now as gas prices are rising, even though the price of oil is falling, gas prices are rising because these vampiric oil companies are extorting everyone. And now it's like, while there's still a pandemic going, now we're still saying like, oh yeah, everyone go back to your jobs. No more working from home. Everyone make sure you go back to your jobs. and go back to your daily, 2-hour commute. I once commuted 4 to 5 hours total daily for a year. Yeah, that's just horrific. Not compensated for the time, not compensated for the gas prices, and of course in the United States, zero public transit to speak of as well. I wish I could get paid all the hours I'm stressing about work, including driving and waking up early to get dressed for it, etc. Yeah. Not public transit per se, but the shitty, expensive, unreliable, and inefficient systems that municipal and regional systems allow. Yeah. There's one thing I love, it's unpaid labor. And that's why we support time theft. That's why we love all our viewers doing time theft. You got to take that back somehow. You do that by doing time theft. By watching the TRRS when you're supposed to be working. That's doing politics, by the way. They'll not only commute, but some will actually humble brag about having to travel 2 hours to get to work like it's some kind of accomplishment. Yeah. I got my driver's license at the age of 28 because I would have lost my job if I didn't. So glad I don't have to do that commute anymore. Or having ideas in the shower, going to bed, playing with kids, all unpaid labor. Yeah, it's where there's a lot. Our whole culture is based on this kind of unpaid labor. I used to have to pay for Uber rides because no car and no bus route, and my job was 20 minutes away when I moved. Had to pay $50 a day to make 100. Well, it's expensive to be poor, isn't it? I was seeing a chart talking about overdraft fees versus like theft. The amount of money lost each year in like burglary and theft versus what the amount it's charged in overdraft fees. And just no fucking comparison. To say nothing of like, yeah, the time theft on the part of your employer as well. Free labor, a cornerstone of the U.S. economy, has literally built the United States. It's not time theft, it's time reclamation. That time was stolen from us in the first place. That's a good way of putting it, B-Rat. I come in early and stay late. Yeah, that's that hustle grind set. The hustle grind set. I'm the first one in the office. I'm the last one to leave every night. Congratulations, dumbass. Good job. I remember when I worked in advertising, there was a lot of that stuff. Like when I actually did the last one, when I actually had a real job, there was a lot of that. Like, you just clock out at 5? You just clock out at 5 and go home? That's a little, don't you care about your like family here? And it's like, no, I care about like my actual family. Yes, I'm leaving my desk at 5 p.m. I'm fucking out of here. I'm not gonna be shamed for like leaving the office at the end of my workday. Fuck off. There's this pressure though. There's this pressure in advertising too. There's this pressure as well to be like, because especially it was a lot of like younger people, and it was like, oh, there's all these like after work functions and parties and stuff you got to go to. Of course, that's not paid. Of course, that's not paid to go to the after work functions and get drunk and do this shit. But it's like you're pressured to do it. If you don't do it, it's like, well, are you part of this community or not? Like, do you care about this or not? There was so much of that shit. The design industry built on hustle bullshit. You need to show that you live and breathe this job. We'll just hire a young grad to replace you. That's right. And at that time, I was just like, no fucking way. I don't care. Do not care. Architecture, design, studio culture is so toxic. It starts in school too, where all-nighters are normalized and encouraged and becomes a clout thing. Yeah, seriously. And in advertising too. Yeah, come in on the weekend, come in on Sunday. Listen, do you want to get this pitch or not? Come in on Sunday. Put this stuff together. Go to the after work function. You just want to live and breathe this into this work culture. This office is your home. This workplace is your family. I like to go to those Zoom happy hours to see if anyone drinks too much and says something funny. I mean, from the comfort of your own home, that sounds not so bad if you enjoy it. But when I was working in that environment, definitely there's this pressure. There's this pressure to always be like showing up for these things. Every time I have to go to a corporate drink thing, I make sure to order the most expensive free drink I can, do some damage at the open bar. Yeah, it's better than nothing. Work is the only thing. Let everything fall away. That's the hustle grind set. That's right. When I worked at Safeways, I was a manager of the deli department. I was expected to work all the shift people's called out for. So I would often work open to close, which is 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I would always get yelled at for having overtime. Like, what do you want from me? Yeah. I want you to do the work. I just don't want you to claim the overtime for the work that you're doing. Is that so complicated? If a workplace says as part of their recruitment effort that they work hard, play hard, run away as fast as you can. Yeah, that's a huge red flag. Massive red flag. I'm the first one in the office stealing food supplies in the kitchen. I'm the last one to leave. Again, stealing, but this time office supplies to resell online. The bosses are so out of touch they think I'm hard at work when in reality I'm hard at work. Oh my gosh, King Innuendo. Jesus. I did not know where that was going when I started reading that comment. I didn't know it was going to this really adult-themed place. What a roller coaster that was, seriously. Got to do the winky face. That's right. Let's we can continue talking about this. Let's watch the end of this documentary about Walter Rodney. I think it's really interesting. Again, read Walter, like uphold Walter Rodney. Read Walter Rodney. We can really learn from him. Let's watch the rest of this and we can chit chat some more and talk shit about our workplaces. But it just goes to show that no matter where you are, that class analysis is going to be the same, right? No matter what bourgeois party you vote for, ultimately, it's the working people doing all the work and getting none of the spoils, regardless of where you are.
The Working People's Alliance challenges that position. We say that far from being resolved, racism has simply been manipulated by the party in power, and that it is absolutely essential for the well-being of the nation as a symbolic entity, and more particularly for the well-being of the working people as real living beings, that we should address ourselves to the problem of race, and that we should transcend rather than ignore the problem of race. The regime simply goes around papering over cracks, posturing, presenting public positions which claim that there is no racial oppression, that there is no racial discrimination, that there is no sense of racism in the way in which they operate the economy. But in actual fact, they play upon the fears of the Afro-Guyanese masses, they exacerbate the fears of the Indo-Guyanese masses, and in everyday affairs, the manipulation of the courts, the question of granting employment, the structure of the national service, the employment in public services and in all of the armed services. In all of these areas of the national life, they are.
Message from banned Bad Bunny Mod Husker Du. After work, social drinking was heavily encouraged at my old corporate job. Someone once tried to throw me under the bus for bringing a beer home from the company fridge because I was broke. It turns out they were a huge Jimmy Dore fan. Go figure. Worlds are colliding. But again, that after work social drinking, that's work. That's still your job. If you're drinking with your coworkers at the end of the day, and this is encouraged, especially by the sort of management, especially, that's work. That's work that you're not being paid for. When I was at Sid Lee, it was a lot of the same stuff. It's like, oh, come away for a weekend. Like, dude, we're doing like a weekend retreat. Isn't that going to be cool? Or not even a weekend, but like we're going to go up to the ski lodge, have a big party, stay overnight, have all kinds of activities. It's going to be really great. And of course, you can't have to go. You can't be like, no, thank you. No, thank you. Not paid. None of it was paid whatsoever. You're just expected to go. Weekend retreats with a bunch of like advertising guys. Do you think I felt very comfortable in that situation? I was just like, get me the fuck out of here. Hated it.
Day-to-day incidents where people of one race or another have cause to feel fear. The Working People's Alliance sees it as one of the principal tasks of our generation, perhaps the most overriding task, to break the division in the ranks of the working class, to overcome that division, to create a unity based on struggle, not a hypothetical unity, not a theoretical unity, but a unity based on struggle, a unity arising out of the fact that workers who are African in origin or Indian in origin, at their place of work, in their places of residence, will struggle for their own material and cultural rewards, and in so doing come to a sense of the necessary unity required to achieve their objectives.
Yeah, conference weekends where we're up at 6 a.m. stuffing swag bags and on until the mixer is done at midnight. Yeah, great, wonderful. Don't you want to be part of the family or not? My boss took me to train on Miami, presented it as a party. We did 18 hours a day, entire 6 days. Oh, with lucky you. Well, how fortunate you are to be involved in that. Whenever my boss tells them something is going to be fun, I tell them I hate fun. That's a good strategy. I like that. Walter Rodney is making too much sense. How come he's not around anymore? And that's exactly, you just answered your own question. It was literally killed in a car bombing like a year and a half after this interview took place. Immensely tragic. Like I was saying, he was 38 years old, and he already delivered a number of really hugely important historical works, including how Europe underdeveloped Africa. I know he wrote a history of the Guyanese slave trade. That's how he kind of made a name for himself in academia. He wrote a celebrated book on the Russian Revolution. And you see when people started talking like this, you know, especially in like neo-colonial Africa, how they became viewed to be threats to the established order. My boss now is really mean to me. He yells at me when I don't get him drinks and is always making me clean up after him. I even have to wipe his butt. I've been there too. Being a parent is having the worst boss of all. I know how it goes. Believe me, I've been there. Got several boss babies. Lately, when I try to like limit my kid doing to like.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Alana, for the gifted sub. I try to like limit his TV or whatever, and I'm like, no, we can't do that tonight. We can't play Fortnite tonight. It's a school night. And he's like, you're so mean to me. And it's just like, buddy, don't start with this. Don't start with this. Do you know how the amount of stuff that I let you do that other parents don't do? Oh my God. You're so mean to me. Get over yourself. Why don't you get a job? How about that? Why don't you start pulling your weight around here? Other parents don't let their kid interrupt their Twitch streams. Thank you. Jesus.
We have seen, I think, some evidence of this. We have seen workers in the bauxite sector coming to an awareness over the years that although they're predominantly African, their principal opponents by no means could be construed to be the Indian workers. On the contrary, that they should call upon the Indian workers to side with them in confrontation with the petty bourgeoisie, even when that petty bourgeoisie is predominantly African.
Bauxite.
We have seen Indian workers, I think, in recent years becoming more aware of the fact that their predicament is not simply because they are Indians or even because they are sugar workers, but because they are workers. And they are faced with an exploitative machinery, which includes Indian merchants, who will establish liaisons and links with the African petty bourgeoisie in order to ensure that the surplus produced in sugar goes into hands other than that of the workers themselves. My own awareness of the history of Guyana in the colonial period is that the colonial regime trembled whenever African and Indian workers moved together. And on the basis of that and many other facts which can be adduced, I would say that when African and Indian workers move together, the local exploiting class will have a very short lease of life.
Great as Rob's mustache is, it shows maturity that he's willing to put such a clearly far superior facial hair on screen next to his. It's true, Punch Drunk Pulpit. It's true. I'm very selfless in this way. Like I said, this man had incredible drip. Much more than someone like me could ever hope to have. And I accept that. The soundtrack, too, is really nice. That's true. That was really cool. That was really cool. I would have liked to have it would have been nice to have subtitles on that. Some of it was a little difficult to make out. But yes, we must uphold Walter Rodney. We should be reading Walter Rodney's book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. I think if you really want to get a comprehensive picture of the evils of colonialism and not just the collateral damage, but the evil, the truly evil acts that these colonialist countries were responsible for. Reading how Europe underdeveloped Africa and open veins of Latin America is like a really... Reading these two books will give you a really, truly comprehensive idea, and you will never have this like false, incorrect idea about collateral damage or our enlightened Western liberal values about human rights and all this bullshit. You'll never believe that dog shit again. This lie that we've been brought up to believe. We'll explore more about Walter Rodney in the coming weeks and months. Question for you, chat. That's how you spell that. LLAT. Okay. I had to check the spelling of collateral. Don't make fun of me. Shut up. Don't make fun of me. I wanted to be sure, okay? Even though Collateral is probably one of my favorite films. One of my favorite Michael Mann films. Anyway, talking about collateral damage. And how, it's not like in America, obviously we care. We're so anguished. We're so anguished about civilian deaths. It's not like it's part of our strategy. We don't mean, when we do civilian deaths, it's just a big accident. We feel really bad about it after. First of all, here's how bad American imperialists feel about this kind of collateral damage.
We have heard...
And again, Madeleine Albright, who just passed away, R.I.P. Bozo, don't care, L plus ratio, plus you're an imperialist, plus you're a war criminal. Here she is.
That's more children than died in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
Well, let me just say that, speaking diplomatically, the world is a mess. I have been to those places, believe me. I have seen people that are dirt poor that then spend money on things that are not healthy. But it is exactly, I think, that out of that difficulty and challenge, it's a huge opportunity. Companies that have the capability of delivering a message that says you can help yourself.
Is the price worth it?
I like the idea of an American product being helpful to people in other parts of the world.
Okay, this is not the right interview.
My whole life.
These are still horrific comments. These are still horrific statements that we can look at. That was not the right... That was some weird mashup thing.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
R.I.P. Bozo. Very easy to say when you're not the one paying that price. Good point, yeah. Hard choices. These are simply hard choices. Fucking, this is a monstrous thing to believe. This is what this American exceptionalist mindset does to you. You're talking about 500,000 kids. L plus ratio plus your first name is spelled fucked plus you're dead. God damn it. Fuck. Oh. Collateral is just the name of Rob's new Montreal pub. Amazing Michael Mann movie, Collateral.
Madeleine Albright has died.
I expect you'll hear more from the secretary later today. Of course, the secretary and the president are aboard Air Force One, but they have been apprised of this. I can say
what a terrible tragedy.
The impact that Secretary Albright, Professor Albright, Dr. Albright, she's known as many titles.
How are Albright and Kissinger still kicking? Afro-Socialista. She's not kicking. She kicked the bucket. The proverbial bucket. She's passed away. She's moved on. She just died today. That's what we're seeing them. They're reacting to her death right now. Of course, they're turning it into a big fucking tragedy. She's entered a new phase. She's croaked. She's gone to her forever home. Big time dead.
Around here and in Washington and around the world. The impact that she has had on this building is felt every single day in just about every single corridor. A number of our most senior officials, from Secretary Blinken to Deputy Secretary Sherman to our Chief of Staff, Susie George.
You're welcome, Afro-Socialista.
We're lucky enough to call her a boss, but I think the better word is probably mentor. And a number of us have had the great pleasure to have gotten to know Secretary Albright over the years. There are a number of people in this building who
I consider Maddie's death a price worth paying. Me too.
And to recall very fondly her tenure. Of course, she was a trailblazer as the first female Secretary of State, and quite literally opened doors for a large element of our workforce.
Professor of yours? She was of mine.
I was never lucky enough to. I was never lucky enough to take her class. I was lucky enough to co-teach with her, and those were experiences that were humbling and terrifying at the time. But
was she running the show during Waco? I don't believe so, because I think she just came on in '97.
That she took so many people under her wing that you have to imagine just how large that wingspan came to be. So. It's a really devastating piece of news. I know there are many.
But again, like the sanctions on Iraq.
Will be grieving today, and our thoughts, of course, are with her family. And
when Clinton bombed that Sudanese pharmaceutical
in this country,
factory,
and I'm sure we'll have more to say.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here.
Talking about Colin Powell, fellow bozo. Spending your latter years lecturing people about fascism, that's fucking rich. Maybe sometimes she was okay, though. At least she hung out with some cool people. And props to Kim Jong-il for taking time out of his busy schedule to meet with this lady. Surprised he gave her the time of day. Shout out to him. It shows how he was willing to meet with even the worst people. Even the horrific Western imperialist monsters. That's how much respect he had for other people. We gotta all start dressing like this.
Thank you.
Let me introduce my delegation. My chief of staff, Elaine Shakers.
The Kim family very accepting and respectful. Look at that. Yeah, the brooch, Jesus Christ. Look at the drip comparison. This is what I mean. Average Americuck versus average DPRK enjoyer. The difference, which really, you're going to tell me here on the side of the person on the left? Really? Come on. Come on now.
You built it all back beautifully.
아주 아름답게 건설을 세우셨습니다.
I went to a kindergarten.
그 유치원에 가서 그랬습니다. 그 어린이들을 봤는데
기쁜 시간 보내셨는가 봐.
So did you spend the pleasant time there?
만족하셨는가?
Very satisfied. 그 어린이들하고 아주 만족하셨습니다.
We gotta all start when you have communism, we're all gonna start wearing these bodysuits, these jumpsuits. Okay?
I'm going to use today two interpreters on both sides.
Both are dead, but only one of these drips will be remembered.
It is really for the first time.
I can't believe you are all celebrating this bad because obviously none of you watch Team America World Police. That's right. Jumpsuits famously not a cult thing. Absolutely not. When we're all in the compound, we're going to have different ones. We can even have a couple different colors to choose from. Still being cordial to these Western demons. We stand a respectful king. Don't worry, children. Don't worry. It's just a demonic Western imperialist. She won't hurt you. She can't dance at all either. She's making a mockery of their culture. Very bad dancer.
I have often spoken about the importance of the World Food Program, but it's so important to see it in person because your work is vital.
And it's like, yeah, you're there visiting with the kids and everything while you're still overseeing a sanction regime that deliberately targets these kids and starves them out. Oh, I'm so generous going to visit these kids in DPRK while I'm literally the Secretary of State overseeing a brutal blockade and sanctions regime from my fucking genocidal country that committed mass murder and arbitrarily carved your country in half. You're welcome. You're welcome, North Korea, for my visit.
Because these children and their brothers and sisters around the country should be able to grow up without fear of emergency, shortages, or famine. And international donors should be assured that the supplies they send are used for the purposes intended.
Madeline. Give me a fucking break. Blaming them for these issues. Blaming them for their issues with feeding their population. Fucking ridiculous. Monstrous person. Get away from those kids, Madeline. Yeah, and lecturing people about fascism. No one knows more about fascism than a former American Secretary of State. That Assad guy. Imagine someone respecting that Assad guy. It's ridiculous. Disgusting. I couldn't even believe someone that would do such a thing. Unbelievable.
Obama did put down a red line, and I personally wish that we had followed through on that. However...
Yeah, Obama didn't do enough in Syria. That's the thing. That's what all these liberal fucking psychos believe, right? I know we helped start the civil war there, and we funded Al-Qaeda and these extremist Islamist groups who were trying to overthrow the government, and I'm certainly would have ended up exactly like Libya. She's pissed they didn't do more. She didn't want to turn it. She's pissed they didn't turn it into another Libya, and that Russia, incidentally, who also did, I would say, commit crimes during this process, prevented them from doing so. But they're the bad guy. They're the bad guy, though. Rob, I just realized that's the guy from earlier. No, I think you're mistaken, Doc. That was someone else. Do you think Madeleine Albright had girl boss energy by sending U.S. bombs to kill millions of civilians? Yeah, or sanctions, right? Like we're sanctioning Russia right now, and we sanctioned Iraq and killed, hundreds of thousands of kids with sanctions in Iraq, which she was A-okay with. She was A-okay with. Dastardly Republicans in Congress prevented him from turning Syria into another Libya.
I do think...
Just need to arm and fund a few more of these radical extremist groups. That'll solve that problem. What do you know? Another situation where the United States was arming and funding extremists, radical extremists, to destabilize an enemy that they didn't like. Where have I heard that strategy before? Can you believe that? I've never heard of that before. Blowback? Never heard of him. That's right. We didn't do that enough, according to Madeline. We just needed to do it a little bit more in Syria, then everything would have been fixed. Sorry, hold on, wait 1 sec. Man. Sorry, just 1 sec. Oh, fuck me. Just one moment. Talk amongst yourselves. Just be 1 sec. God. Oh, it keeps down. Sorry, just one moment. This is gonna be worth it. Okay? This is gonna be worth it. I promise you this. I promise you this. Okay? Sorry, Madeline. I just had a question. Madeline. Can you answer my question? Who must go? What were you just saying there? What, you were just saying something. I didn't quite catch that. Who must go again? Can you? Oh, you can't. Okay. I see. Interesting. You can't respond. I'm sorry to hear that. Prayers up. Another W for this man, whoever he is. I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know either. We're still waiting, Madeline. Here's something else about Madeline's. It's amazing Colbert on the fucking late night show manufacturing consent for more hostility and more war and conflict in Syria. Like, unbelievable. Like, yeah, it's very funny. Really hilarious to have more fucking war propaganda on the goddamn late show with Stephen Colbert. And we don't have state media, of course. We don't have state media in the United States. Let's hear Noam Chomsky on the bombing of the Al-Shifa factory, which happened under our departed girl boss, former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright.
Anybody you want to. Let's take 1998, so it's before it. In 1998, here's another thing you're not allowed to say in the United States or the West. It leads to hysteria, but I'll say it. In 1998, Clinton bombed the major pharmaceutical plant in the Sudan. Okay, this is the plant that's producing most of the pharmaceuticals and veterinary medicines for a poor African country that's under embargo, can't replace them. What's that going to do? It's obviously going to kill unknown numbers of people. In fact, the U.S. barred an investigation by the UN, so we don't know. And of course, you don't investigate your own crimes, but there's some evidence. So the German ambassador, who was a fellow at Harvard University to Sudan, wrote an article in the Harvard International Review in which he estimated the casualties in the tens of thousands of deaths. The the head of the Near East Foundation, very respectable foundation, the regional director at fieldwork in Somalia, in Sudan, he did a study. He came out with the same conclusion, probably tens of thousands dead. Right after the bombing, within weeks, Human Rights Watch issued a warning that there's going to be a humanitarian catastrophe and gave examples of aid workers being pulled out from areas where people were dying at a vast rate.
Just collateral damage.
You cannot mention this. Any mention of this brings the same hysteria as criticizing the bombing of the TV station. It's unmentionable. It's a Western crime, and therefore it was legitimate. We're not, I mean, just suppose that Al-Qaeda
big mistake
blew up half the pharmaceutical supplies in the U.S. or England or Israel or any country in which people lived, human beings, not ants, people. I mean, can you imagine the reaction? We'd probably have a nuclear war. But when we do it to a poor African country, it didn't happen. Not discussed. In fact, the only issue that is discussed, there is discussion, is whether the intelligence was correct when it claimed that it was also producing chemical weapons.
Yeah, it was just a big mistake.
That is the only question. Mention anything else, the usual hysteria and tirades. This is a very disciplined, Western intellectual culture is extremely disciplined and rigid. You cannot go beyond fixed bounds. It's not, it's not censored. It's all voluntary. But it's true. It's not, really not every society is like this. In fact, the third world countries are different. So take, say, Turkey, half third world. I mean, Turkey, the intellectuals, the leading intellectuals, best known writers, academics, journalists, artists, I mean, they not only protest atrocities like the Kurdish massacres, they protest them constantly, but they're also constantly carrying out civil disobedience against them. Actually, I've participated with them sometimes. They will publish banned writings, which report it, present them to the prosecutor's office, demand to be prosecuted. That's not a joke. You know, facing, sometimes they are sent to prison. That's no joke. There's nothing like that in the West.
So again, the bombing of this Al-Shifa factory happened under dearly departed girl boss Madeleine Albright, who also, as we saw, supported sanctions that killed hundreds of thousands of children in Iraq and set the stage for the Iraq War. I'd actually be interested to see the statements that she made about the Iraq War when it was going on. And that's it. And that's, remember, it's just a big whoops, just a big whoopsie. Mistakes happen. Sometimes we mess up, as that person said. Sometimes we mess up. And now we're going to be celebrating Madeleine Albright. We're going to be hearing all of the words about all the wonderful things she accomplished. The trailblazer, you know, first female Secretary of State, all these incredible accomplishments. None of this will be mentioned, as Chomsky said. Didn't happen. It just didn't happen. We got the intelligence wrong. We didn't mean to bomb that pharmaceutical company. We didn't mean to bomb that pharmaceutical factory. We didn't mean to bomb that wedding or that funeral or that hospital. We got the intelligence wrong, and we looked into it ourselves, and we're going to try and do better. We're going to try and not do this thing in the future. And we feel really bad about it. That's the difference. You see, that's the difference between the evil Russians and the noble and good Americans. Right? First of all, they do these things by accident, and they feel really, really bad about it after. And the Russians do it on purpose, and they like it, and they think it's good to do it. Can you believe these sick motherfuckers? Yeah, and when we blow up a pharmaceutical factory, we see you, we hear you. We're very sorry to the tens of thousands of victims that are resulting from our bombing this major pharmaceutical factory in this poor country. We see you, we hear you, and there's going to be zero fucking consequences, and we're just going to ignore that it ever happened. Ours is just a little whoopsie-doopsie. That's right, Xander. Just a little whoopsie-doopsie. You know, just sick. Sick shit. That's what I mean when I looked at that, like, when I looked at that tweet earlier, that's what I mean. It's not just some random Twitter account. This is how a lot of Americans believe. I would say most Americans, most American liberals believe this. And at least neocons and psychotic conservatives are more honest when they don't try and dress this shit up in human rights or whatever, and they just say, yeah, we did that and we thought it was good. It's just the thing that really drives me crazy with these liberals that try to wrap themselves in this this like completely phony rhetoric about human rights and these enlightened liberal values while carrying out the exact same brutal mass murder campaigns. And they try to pretend that they're somehow enlightened or they're better than these other countries. You know, give me a fucking break.
The Al-Shifa factory in Khartoum, targeted by cruise missiles and where, according to the White House, deadly chemicals were made for use with nerve gas. But it's also where engineer Tom Carnafin worked for 4.5 years.
The computers, I saw to the shipping of those out to them. Had meals in the factory, had tea in the factory, visited with the people, with the Mahmoud family and with the managers from the factory, took photographs in the factory. There was never any restrictions in that sort of way.
The Sudanese government have been quick to point out that among the rubble are ordinary medicine bottles. They claim this was just a children's pharmaceutical company and not a chemical weapons site.
It was just unsuitable because there was no airlocks or anything like that would actually have given the safety required for doing that sort of work. The veterinary side, that was a constant problem actually, because the doors from the mixing rooms and so forth where they had Z-blade mixers were straight out onto the factory roadway. And there was an ingress of dust on lots of occasions, and actually they had problems with it. So it wasn't a suitable place for making chemical weapons in.
Will now be calling on the United Nations to inspect the Khartoum plant and verify Mr. Karnafin's story.
Whatever came of that. Any consequences for that, by the way? Did any consequences ever come down the pike for Clinton or Madeleine Albright?
Today, I ordered our armed forces to strike at terrorist-related facilities in Afghanistan and Sudan.
If I remember correctly, please someone remind me. If I remember correctly, this is right when Clinton was mired in this big sex abuse scandal with Monica Lewinsky, and Hillary was no longer talking to him, and he literally gave the okay for this military strike because Hillary was ignoring him, and he wanted to show her that he was like a big man, and she liked it, and that's when they started repairing their relationship. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? I know there was some incident like this. I believe it was in Sudan and Afghanistan, but I don't know if it's this exact incident. They rediscovered their love over war crimes. Hillary wrote about this. I'm not making this shit up. Hillary wrote about this.
Because of the imminent threat they presented to our national security. I want to speak with you about the objective of this action and why it was necessary. Our target was terror. Our mission was clear: to strike at the network of radical groups affiliated with and funded by Osama bin Laden, perhaps the preeminent organizer and financier of international terrorism in the world today. The groups associated with him come from diverse places but share a hatred for democracy, a fanatical glorification of violence, and a horrible distortion of their religion to justify the murder of innocents. They have made the United States their adversary precisely because
I'm trying
of
to
what
find
we
the
stand for and what we
the
stand
clip that I'm
against.
mentioning.
A few months ago, and again this week, bin Laden publicly vowed to wage a terrorist war against America, saying, and I quote, "We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians. They're all targets. Their mission is murder." And
listen to what he's talking. Listen, we just looked at the result of this bombing campaign. This is so illustrative of this entire conversation, right? About collateral damage. And he's talking about these terrorists that don't care about innocent lives, while describing an airstrike that was responsible for destroying a pharmaceutical factory for children's pharmaceuticals that led to tens of thousands of deaths in Sudan. And the terrorists, they don't care for innocent life. And we respect human rights and innocent life. If you need to send a message to Justin Trudeau, turns out I actually have a connection. I'm sorry to hear that, Nicole. Maybe we can workshop something. And again, this all happened under a woke girl boss queen, Secretary of State, dearly departed Madeleine Albright. It's so illustrative, though. Literally talking about how the terrorists, they don't respect human life, while you're describing the bombing of a pharmaceutical factory that made medicine for children.
We do not differentiate between those dressed in military uniforms and civilians. They're all targets. Their mission is murder, and their history is bloody. In recent years, they killed American, Belgian, and Pakistani peacekeepers in Somalia. They plotted to assassinate the President of Egypt and the Pope. They planned to bomb 6 United States 747s over the Pacific. They bombed the Egyptian embassy in Pakistan. They gunned down German tourists in Egypt. The most recent terrorist events are fresh in our memory. 2 weeks ago, 12 Americans and nearly 300 Kenyans and Tanzanians lost their lives, and another 5,000 were wounded when our embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam were bombed. There is convincing information from our intelligence community that the bin Laden terrorist network was responsible for these bombings. Based on this information, we have high confidence that these bombings were planned, financed, and carried out by the organization bin Laden leads. America has battled terrorism for many years. Where possible, we've used law enforcement and diplomatic tools to wage the fight. The long arm of American law has reached out around the world and brought to trial those guilty of attacks in New York, in Virginia, and in the Pacific. We have quietly disrupted terrorist groups and foiled their plots. We have isolated countries that practice terrorism. We've worked to build an international coalition against terror. But there have been,
I'm really trying to find that
times
article about Hillary
law
Clinton and
enforcement
Bill and their
diplomatic
marriage problems
tools
and
are
this
simply not
bombing.
enough. When our very national security is challenged, and when we must take extraordinary steps to protect the safety of our citizens.
Yeah. And literally, like, yeah, setting the stage for 9/11, which happened just a few years after. Despite the idea that they're solving all these problems and defeating the terrorists by bombing these pharmaceutical factories, etc.
Compelling evidence that the bin Laden network of terrorist groups was planning to mount further attacks against Americans and other freedom-loving people. I decided America must act. And so this morning, based on the unanimous recommendation of my national security team, I ordered our armed forces to take action to counter an immediate threat from the bin Laden network. Earlier today, the United States carried out simultaneous strikes against terrorist facilities and infrastructure in Afghanistan. Our forces targeted one of the most active terrorist bases in the world. It contained key elements of the bin Laden network's infrastructure and has served as a training camp for literally thousands of terrorists from around the globe. We have reason to believe that a gathering of...
Yeah, also, but this is true. And this is true that this took place 1 week after the Lewinsky scandal broke. When you think about all these high-minded ideas about protecting human life and the stuff, this is 1 week previously the Lewinsky scandal broke, and he's literally just like, oh, let's not stop talking about this. We're at war. We're at war here. And he's literally describing the bombing. Because he's got this sex scandal, because he's this pervert fucking rapist. He's got this sex scandal going on. His wife won't talk to him. So he bombs a child's pharmaceutical company, a child's pharmaceutical factory in Sudan, leading to tens of thousands of civilian casualties. And literal kids in this impoverished country. Impoverished why? Because of centuries of deliberate underdevelopment on the part of the colonial powers, including the United States. And then these are the people, whether it's Madeleine Albright, who was Secretary of State at this time, or Bill Clinton, or whoever, that love to lecture us about these enlightened liberal values. You know, it just makes me sick.
Of key terrorist leaders was to take place there.
Imagine dying because of some
Thus
dude that jizzed on his
underscoring the
intern's dress.
urgency
That's literally
of
what
our
happened here.
actions.
That is not an exaggeration. A biography of Hillary Clinton written by Gail Shee and published in late 1999 stated that Ms. Clinton had refused to talk to the president for 8 months after the Monica Lewinsky scandal broke. She resumed talking to her husband only when she phoned him and urged him in the strongest terms to begin bombing Serbia. Okay, so that's what I was referring to. Anyway, all this happened under, again, enlightened enlightened liberal girl boss, Madeleine Albright, no longer with us.
in order to have a strong, good life here at home. On their behalf, I ask now that in the next century, no less than this one, America must continue to be the world's greatest force for peace and freedom and prosperity. Madeleine Albright has the strength and wisdom to help ensure that America remains the indispensable nation.
I state your name.
I, Madeleine Corbell Albright,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith,
and allegiance to the same,
allegiance to the same,
that I take this
Jack keeps
obligation
up
freely
Yoko's
take
entire
this
operation
obligation
into the
freely,
ground.
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
No one wants that.
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties of the office
discharge the duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Madam Secretary.
They can embrace, and a reasoning they can relate.
Yeah, you know it smelled crazy in there.
We must heed the President's call to place patriotism, but if we are complacent or timid or unwilling to look beyond our borders, our citizens will not prosper, and the framework of American leadership and the foundation of American security we have built could crumble with 21st century speed. I think especially of 5 people. My mother, we must not shy from the mantle of leadership, nor hesitate to defend our interests, nor fail in our commitments, nor diverge from the principles that have defined, elevated, and sustained our nation for more than 200 years. Let us proceed. Thank you very much.
And again, I'll just play this one more time as well. This is what Madeleine Albright stood
We
for.
have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Cool. It's all just collateral damage, folks. Those 500,000 Iraqi kids. It's all just collateral damage. This is the people that we celebrate. This is who we celebrate. In our enlightened liberal democracies over here in the West. Yeah, she felt really bad about it. That's the difference, remember? She felt really bad about it. Ah. She felt such anguish. Just a sicko. Just another sicko. Remember that American intervention into the Middle East has always been righteous and justified. That's right. It was always because of these important values of human rights. Remember, the terrorists hate our freedom. They target civilians. Can you believe these terrorists that target civilians intentionally? Just like the Russians. Just like the Russians. They just don't, they hate our freedom and they don't respect human rights like we do. They don't feel bad about it when they kill civilians like when we do. They hate life, not like us. Speaking from the grave, boys, I don't care if you felt bad. I hope I live to see HRC fall. She got COVID. How the fuck is Kissinger still alive, though? Seriously. Seriously. I would love for Hillary to run in 2024 as well. I would absolutely love that, definitely. I mean, she's got a case now because they've laid the groundwork for the libs with like the whole Hillary warned you about Putin stuff. And the libs would get on board with it. They would get on board right away. It is her turn. Let's do it. Let's go. Hillary Trump 2. This time it's personal. This time it's personal. She would fail again. I mean, she probably would, and that would be extremely funny. That would be very, very funny.
Fascism is hard to define. It's a term we kind of throw around, which is that whenever you disagree with somebody, you just say they're a fascist. Or when the teenage boy's father doesn't let him drive, the father is a fascist. And so trying to define fascism is not easy, and because it's not an ideology, it's a process for taking power. And what happens is the leader is somebody who identifies with one group, a tribal group, at the expense of another. And so that identification with the one group, which is, by the way, to go back to the megatrends on the identity aspect.
This is what no theory does to a motherfucker.
At the expense of the other, but the other is then the scapegoat for everything that goes wrong.
This is what no theory does to a motherfucker.
A leader that can find common ground, what happens is this demagogic leader is elected because it's somebody who usually knows how to manipulate crowds and do any number of kind of appealing aspects to people.
This is like 8th grade shit. This is like an 8th grade definition of fascism.
Now, I think that my definition of a fascist then is somebody who does this division of society, who is somebody that does not respect any of the institutions, that thinks that the press is the enemy of the people.
Orange man bad.
That
He's orange.
Above the law. The best quote in my book actually comes from Mussolini, who said, if you pluck a chicken one feather at a time,
I don't doubt it.
Nobody notices. So there's a lot of feather plucking going on at the moment. And by the way, you can't say those two words together too quickly.
Oh, hilarious. What was that?
Time, nobody notices. So there's a lot of feather plucking going on at the moment. And by the way, you can't say those two words together too quickly.
Hilarious. It was when a fascist is when you don't respect those institutions. That's right. Seriously, this is literally what no class does to an MF. Look at this lady. The best quote in my book actually comes from Mussolini. I don't know about that, Madeline. That guy was pretty bad. That rules-based international order, yeah, you got to respect it. That's right. That's the thing. And when you ignore the kind of class element of fascism, that's what you end up with, this kind of liberal gobbledygook. Just a bunch of gobbledygook there about like being like racist and not respecting institutions and manipulating crowds of people. When you ignore that it is this element of fascism in decay, you're completely ignoring that kind of class element of it, right? Ignoring the way that traditionally, especially like whether it's in Mussolini's Italy or in Germany, where you have a state that exists primarily to serve the interests of private capital, right? And uses racism and uses kind of division and uses targets minorities and uses this kind of division to consolidate power. But ultimately, it's an economic mode of production. It's about serving private capital above all else, where that's the holy role of the state. And as well as, like, you talk about America, like not respecting institutions, not respecting democracy, the country that's been overthrowing governments, destabilizing governments all over the world, in Central and South America, in Southeast Asia, in Africa, like we looked at with Walter Rodney, all over the world for decades and decades at the interest of private capital, leading to mass killing campaigns in Indonesia, right? In Vietnam with Operation Phoenix. The free market Holocaust, as Parenti talked about it, after the war, all led by the United States. And she was literally like she's at the head of the ship for several years, and we're supposed to respect this. You know, there's no greater entity, there's no greater spreader of fascism throughout the globe than the United States of America. The Fourth Reich, that's right. Post-World War II fascists literally turned to institutions as their way to power. And the way to hold on to it.
Become an elite member of the friendship triangle.
To prevent the people from combating it by isolating them from levers of power. Bad Bunny, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Chat, come on, we can't be letting Nicole bail us out here. Nicole should not be gifting 5 subs. I appreciate it, Nicole. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. But come on, though. Come on, though. In fact, I do have to go soon. So listen, I'm just gonna do this. I think that'll do it for today anyway. In terms of the actual serious discussion That's a good place to end it on. Madeleine Albright having the fucking audacity to lecture people about fascism, despite, you know, being the Secretary of State for the greatest purveyor of fascism.
You can count on me
over the last several
good old
decades.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you very much, Comrade Social Distancing, as well.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob
with the 2
to,
gifted
talk you
subs.
through all this.
Crab, 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 crab.
Rob hates when Bad Bunny gifts subs because that means he needs to gift subs to her later. And Bad Bunny says he has literally never gifted a sub in my channel. That's fake news. That's fake news, Nicole. Okay? That's not true. It's not a huge number. Okay? It's at least 3. Tiniest Boop, thank you very much for the 8 months of tier 1.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Ragdijin, thank you very much for the 2 gifted subs. Or the 2 total, but the 1 gifted subs right now. I really appreciate that. Thank you. We're 5 away, folks. I like how you're accusing me of plotting some scheme of misinformation against you, when maybe I just missed the one time you gifted subs. It's been at least 2 or 3 occasions.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Regular Mole Rat Dragon, thank you very, very much for the 11 months of tier 1. Thank you so much, Regular Mole Rat Dragon. We'll take this chat offline, Nicole. We don't need to litigate
of the friendship triangle.
Who's gifted subs to who. You've gifted a few subs. I've gifted a few subs. We don't need to get into the details of the exact figures. Ashley Bean Pie, thank you very, very much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you so, so much, Ashley Bean Pie. But I don't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. 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 Don't think sorry is easily said.
Some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada.
Turn the tables instead.
This.
Hey, The Culture, thanks very much for the raid. Welcome. But I don't need to see anymore to know that that's how it goes. 'Cause part of me knows what you're thinking. Heroic Skeleton, thank you very much for the Prime. 2 months of Prime, thank you. I can read your mind. I am the maker of rules. Dealing with fools, I can cheat you blind. But I don't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. I can read your mind. The Culture, you just came in this singing hour. The singing hour, I guess you came into. Rob Arts, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you so much, Rob Arts. I know the lyrics. I love this song. It's one of my favorite songs. I don't need to see anymore to know that I can read your mind. I'll do a little dance for you next because we hit the sub goal and we made it to 43 subs. Okay? You've earned this. What's the word or name for this kind of music synthesization? Does it have a specific name? I guess this is specifically the Sega Genesis version. These are all Sega Genesis sounds. Alright, you've earned this, chat, and I'm sorry if you're the culture, if you're coming here for like important discourse, I'm sorry, I already did all that stuff. I have to go soon. So now I'm just singing and dancing and just making an ass of myself. You've earned this. This song is so great. When that chorus hits, it still is just tremendous. Never gets old. And if anyone still wants to subscribe, that's still an option. See, I'm literally dancing. I don't want to be greedy, but I mean, come on. Ashen Sin, thank you very much for the Prime sub. I'm glad I sold you on this stream from this. Talk to you tomorrow.